Good evening, everybody. Good evening, Mr. Real.
RFM, I hope you've had a great week.
It's been super. A wonderful week indeed. And tonight is going to be such a great night. I know it's your show, but I'm very excited for our guest. Do you have any announcements that you wanted to make before we bring our guest on the show?
Only to say, folks, like and subscribe, please. Share this with your friends and neighbors. Make sure you knock on doors and proselyte Mormonism live. Share it with everybody near and far, as Kermit the Frog or Grover would say on Sesame Street. Otherwise, we can jump right into it, my friend.
It is incumbent on everyone who hath been warned to warn his neighbor.
That's
so
right.
Do proselyte with Mormonism live. By the way, a couple of weeks ago, that there's a new video series now out by Scripture Central. It's called A Marvelous Work. And then it's subtitled How Great the Evidence, or How Great the Evidence Is. I can't remember exactly if it's plural, but the meaning is the same. And they did their first episode a couple months ago, in which they present some evidences for the Book of Mormon. We did a review of that. And then more recently, they issued their second episode, and we did a review of that as well. And the first person they had in that second episode that they spoke with was a rabbi. And it's a rabbi that I had not heard of before, but I'm glad to have heard of him now. His name is Joe Charnes. And the host, Scott Christopher, spoke with him for a total of what ended up being 6 minutes in the episode, the second episode. A few weeks ago, we did a review of that episode as well. We said a few things about Rabbi Joe Charnes, and some of them may not have been the most charitable. I don't know. But much to our surprise, guess who got a hold of us? Yeah. It was Rabbi Joe Charnes. And he suggested maybe coming on the show, correcting some misstatements that we had made. And we said, sure, absolutely. We'd love to have you on the show. And so here he is, Rabbi Joe Charnes.
Joe, how are you?
Rabbi?
Shalom, brothers. How you doing?
It's so great to see you. I know we haven't met, but I've spoken with you Monday for about an hour, yesterday for about an hour. You called me, said it'll only take a minute. An hour later, we were still talking. But that's because we were having such a great time. I was having a great time talking with you. You're a delightful individual. And we're so happy to have you on the show. Now, tonight, this is officially Bill's show. So yes. I'm going to stop talking so much right now, hand it over to him. He's got a certain order of things that he wants to go through, and I'll be piping in wherever I think it's appropriate.
Sure. Excellent. So, Joe, first off, thank you for reaching out. I'm deeply open to the feedback you have regarding how we articulated various aspects of your conversation with Scott. And so let's just jump into it. I'm going to put up on the screen. This was the thumbnail we used. I'm going to skip here to the next slide and just start off maybe with some introductory questions to give you a chance to sort of tell folks maybe a little bit about yourself. So before we jump into these questions, is there any way you would maybe a brief bio about yourself that you'd like to share just to give folks sort of a precursor to who you are and maybe why we're sitting down with you today?
Sure. And I think also my bio, in one sense, will become more understandable as far as what I hope to do in life as a member of the clergy as we go through our dialogue and discuss the segments from your show. But briefly, my purpose in life, hopefully, is to bring ultimately the wisdom of my tradition, the inspiration of my faith tradition, the Jewish faith, into the world, and at the same time to learn from other people's holy wisdom, from their holy texts, and to be inspired by the beauty that they bring into the world and the models that they, as human beings inspired by holy wisdom, can share with us. Because I've learned a lot, genuinely a lot, from my fellow religionists and from those who are not of a particular faith, just the decency of their humanity. So I seek always to have groups from across the spectrum, and I mean the entirety of the spectrum, with us in our studies, in our holy time celebrations, so that I can learn and that we can learn together as a community. There's a beautiful principle in the Jewish faith, actually in our legal tradition, called the Mishnah. And there it says, who is wise? Because all of our faith communities are seeking wisdom, hopefully. Maybe not all the practitioners of those faith traditions, but ideally all faith traditions are seeking to guide us into a deeper place of wisdom. And it's one of my favorite teachings, and I genuinely try to live with this insight and with this inspiration. It asks the question, who is wise? And the answer that is offered is very brief, but I think very profound. It says, one who learns, or is learning, more technically in the Hebrew, it's in a participle, but one who is learning from every human being. Notice it's not from every rabbi, although it's my rabbis who are writing it. It says, who is wise? One who learns from every human being. And I take that very seriously because I believe that human beings have a spark from above, or again, if that's not your reference in terms of the outlook, we have a decency within us as part of our human makeup. And we can all learn from each other and grow from each other and hopefully build a better world together. So that on one foot, as we say in Judaism, briefly, is what I think I would like to begin with. That I seek to learn from human beings, whatever their source of wisdom is, as I live with the beauty and the light of my holy wisdom that is all enlightened and deepened and broadened by the other.
Yeah.
Rabbi, something I didn't know about you. I mean, I didn't know anything about you before I talked with you, really, or before I saw you on that second episode of Marvelous Work, is that you are very much into faith, interfaith dialogue.
Yes, sir.
With other religions. Mormonism is one.
Yes.
Also, you mentioned to me on the phone, you do the same kind of thing with Catholics, and Calvinists were two that you mentioned. And I take it that you're open to doing the same thing with pretty much anybody. I mean, you're here on Mormonism Live, so I guess the sky's the limit.
Yeah, well, we all have our low points in life.
Yes.
But
I'm happy to join with you in this nadir.
I'm glad to have company down here. But I've done it for the evangelical community. I've done it in basically all faith communities I have sought to engage with, and many are open. I've done it with Buddhists, with Hindus, with Muslims, with Taoists, with human beings. Is ultimately, that's the focus of my spiritual life. How can our spiritual lives deepen our humanity so that we live, in the words of Isaiah 42 and Isaiah 49, how can we be a light unto the nations? I think that's the call of us all, that we all have to bring that light of our humanity and of our decency in our words, in our thoughts, and in our actions. Okay, that's my ultimate bottom line.
I think that's great. Thank you, Rabbi. I think that describes Mormonism Live in a nutshell.
I love it.
And
so
that's not a punchline.
Seriously,
but also, this is an avocation for you in terms of it's a calling for you.
Yes.
This interfaith dialogue. You don't get paid for this, correct?
Correct. Regardless of what one of your, I will be as gracious in my.
I know one of our listeners made a comment somewhere, and that you took umbrage at it. We're going to hear it now, and go ahead, lay it on us.
It wasn't umbrage. I don't even know what umbrage means. Is that an umbrella? But
it might come from that, but it means to take offense.
Thank you.
Like
how do you say that in
something.
Hebrew? One of your commentators,
Mm-hmm.
and I've seen his name pop up on several comments. I generally don't look at comments because often commenters seek simply to tear down rather than to build up. And regardless of what you think of my faith or of my interfaith engagement, can you say something at least positive and healing and nourishing in addition to your criticisms? There are always criticisms that we can level, but is there anything that we can also uplift and enlighten through our words? So one of your commenters responded to another comment, which, how much does this guy get paid? And someone mentioned he gets paid in shekels, which is funny, except many of his other, or her other, I don't know if it's a he or a she, I just can't tell from the name, generally the tone or tenor of the comments of that person tend to be mocking and condescending. And again, maybe there were hundreds that I didn't see, but of the ones that I did see, they seem to be less charitable than I would hope. And so I didn't take that particularly charitably. And the specific reference of shekels could be, I try in my tradition also to give the benefit of the doubt to a person. That's another legal practice that hopefully we live from the heart. The law is a guide for us to be inspired within our hearts. And I hope I can live with that inspiration, not just know it in my mind. So I'm trying to give that person the benefit of the doubt that he really did mean the crack about the shekels in a humorous way, but it might have been too familiar, too fast. And again, you and I have had a conversation, RFM, that we often engaged in a lot of humorous dialogue. And even though your heart, wink, wink, got to let the crowd know, I actually do appreciate you, RFM. we did have a lot of fun together in our dialogues, and I'm grateful that we have met. And my hope ultimately is that this dialogue, again, will leave us, all of us, listeners and panelists, with more respect and more reverence for life and more honor of our fellow human beings, regardless of where we are on the spectrum, whatever our faith background is, whatever struggles we have with our faith. And don't think I don't have struggles with my own. But I hope I'm not a Messianic Jew. People often accuse me of that because I study the New Testament. I think it's a beautiful work of sacred wisdom, even though I part ways theologically. I think it's parallel. I don't think it's antithesis or antithetical. We do have parallel ways to bring the light and beauty into the world. But Paul, I'm quoting Paul not as a Messianic Jew, but as a respecter of deep wisdom. And Paul says God loves a cheerful giver. Okay. I wish we could give each other more charity of heart, more charity of mind, and more charity of love when we're in dialogue with each other. So I hope that person doesn't really mean that in what sounds like a Jewish trope. And I hope if he is or she is listening, I hope I'm right in giving you the benefit of the doubt. If I'm not, I'm sure I'll get a finger along the way in the comments.
We just dust the dirt off our feet on people like that. It's okay. It's good.
It's the Mormon thing to
I'm
do.
glad you got that off your chest, though. By the way,
I'm here to bare my soul.
There it is.
I'm feeling blue.
You've got the azure blue garment on.
Yes, sir.
The temple garment. So here's the thing is that, the New Testament, it's great. It's nothing compared to the Book of Mormon, though, which brings us to how on earth was it that you ended up getting invited onto A Marvelous Work for an interview?
Well, are we going to go through any of the video segments? I'm just wondering. It doesn't matter.
Yes,
to me.
where it goes to Bill, because I had a certain way of doing it, and I talked with Bill about it. He has a different way of covering the same ground. He wants to make sure. Here I am taking over. Bill, go ahead.
So, Joe, we're going to cover.
Sorry,
Megan.
I just wanted to jump in real quick and
Nathan,
just say, sorry, I didn't get a chance to talk to you before the show, but I have your clips ready also. So if you just want to, give a reference to which one, we can find that easily and have that up as well. So
And my hope, Joe, is that because the crowd has watched that conversation, I don't think you're going to find me or RFM resistant to any of your feedback.
I don't either.
No. So we will, I promise you, we'll cover each of your concerns as we go along the way. To RFM's question,
yes,
maybe help us set up. And again, we're 16 minutes in already. I want to try to cover a lot of ground. So start us off by telling us, when they approached you to ask you to come on to do this conversation, what was the explanation of what they were wanting to utilize you for?
Okay.
Can you maybe start there?
Sure. Fair question. I think a beautiful way to start. And I'm looking forward to connecting with Maven, the amazing Maven. Thank you, Maven, for all your comments. And it was a pleasure to see you briefly. And I hope you come back. My reason for being contacted was somebody, apparently, I don't know who, from Scripture Central, reached out to the producers of the Marvelous Work and the Wonder and said, maybe talk to Rabbi Joe about this. He does interfaith. He does study our texts. He has been a real presence in our community. So maybe reach out to him. And they called me. And here's where I feel, honestly, you did. Part of it is their fault, Scripture Central's fault, for giving a 6-minute excerpt or segments from a 2-hour interview that they pieced together. I don't think it's not a dishonorable way, and it was nothing intentional. But I don't think they put together the parts of our interview in a way that gave a broader picture of why I was there. The second extended interview, I think, captured more. I really
Why
do.
were you there? In other words, you felt it didn't capture why you were there. So why were you
the first
there?
one didn't. And I just wanted to say that I don't feel they portrayed very well the reason for my presence in the first one. The second one, I think it helped. But let me say it briefly here. And warning, when Joe says he's going to speak briefly, get your pillows out. No, just kidding. I spoke one time. I said, I'm going to be brief, I promise. And after I spoke, somebody got up and said, I don't know what is more, I'm shocked by more, that Joe spoke for less than 7 minutes or that he's wearing a jacket, a fancy jacket. So the idea for me of being on the show was they wanted me there to discuss the Hebrew evidence and the ancient nature and structure of the Book of Mormon itself. Do I see any of these Hebraic patterns in the language or in the text itself, in the imagery or any aspect, specifically Jacob chapter 5? And so I said, honestly, please hear me on this. I said, no, you don't need me for that. You really don't. So a lot of the complaints or criticisms, or we'll just leave it at that, the criticisms, which I think were fair, I didn't present any evidence because I said up front, first of all, that's not my area of specialty. I go through Come Follow Me. I do study this new, well, I guess they're in the second cycle. I do study with a lot of LDS, Latter-day Saint people, authorities, and laity. And I felt that you don't need me to testify whether there is evidence or not on the Book of Mormon's Hebraic roots or its ancient nature. You have your own experts like Donald Perry and Professor Welch and people of that nature. I said, I will come and speak. I think this would be better. I will come and speak on what I think the Hebraic forms that you might be able to find in the text that prove nothing, because they could have just, well, probably did in many cases, if you want to be critical, take it from the King James edition, which Joseph Smith knew about, or simply 19th century English, which is patterned off of and influenced by the King James Bible. So I don't care if there are Hebrew evidences or Hebraisms or symbolism that sounds Hebraic. Of course there is. You're basing it off the King James Bible. I said, what I would like to do is discuss as a rabbi, as a person of the Jewish faith, what do those Hebraisms possibly symbolize to the mind of a Jew, or at least this Jew, because I don't read a text, I don't read any sacred text simply. I always believe, whether it's my text or another person's text, I think there is a wider, wiser guide and broader wisdom than I might be able to understand. So I give the benefit of the doubt. So I said, I will give you an insight into my teachings, how I filter them through my mind and my heart, how I see this text as if it was Jewish. I don't know about whether it was or wasn't, whether it's ancient or modern. That's not my focus. I am not here to give evidence. I am simply here to tell you how, give me this text, and I will read it as a rabbi through the poetic prism of how I interpret faith, which is often through what we call in my tradition, midrash. It's a searching, poetic, metaphoric, symbolic way of engaging with a sacred text in the Jewish faith. I do that with all text. I try to understand the context, and then I want to understand the inner dimension so that it can lift up my soul and I can live with more high life, with more wisdom, with more beauty, and with more compassion. That's what I told them. And honestly, I called them up after the first show that I watched. You're on mute, brother.
Muted, Arthur.
This
Say
is
again?
part of my shtick, is that I mute myself every now and again, and I talk, and then I unmute myself after Bill says you're muted, because the audience seems to love it.
Oh, we love your muted teachings.
Yes,
And
a muted RFM is the best RFM. However, no, I'm enjoying your story. I just don't want to get too far ahead. I want to ask, first off, when was it that you were interviewed? Because you said you were interviewed for 2 hours. Where did that take place? Because is that a set of some sort where you appear with the chairs and the candelabra?
We were in Spain.
I knew it. I knew it.
But was that their set, or was that your synagogue, or where did that take place?
They said they were going to fly out to me. And I said, once they said yes, by the way, to the symbolic, and I said,
they agreed to your stipulation.
To that. I said, I will discuss Hebraisms, but not whether that proves anything. I'll tell you what a Hebraism means, which again, when I discussed the and in the first one, they didn't mention the background. When I discussed a lot of Hebraisms, they didn't give you the insights that I gave. But we were in, it was in mid-February. It was in Salt Lake City. I'm not supposed to discuss because of the synagogue. I guess I just ruined that one. But they didn't want any reference. The synagogue itself didn't want any reference to them being the host, just for security reasons. It's anxious. People are anxious today.
Yeah, but it was a Jewish synagogue.
It absolutely was a Jewish synagogue.
Hopefully there's more than one.
Yes, there is.
Good.
Yes, there is.
Cool.
That doesn't identify it specifically.
Yes, and it might have been Salt Lake City, Arizona.
Yes. Or Salt Lake City, Spain. This is sort of an inside joke. This is sort of an inside joke, only because I had thought that he was at Spain because of the way the show is edited. But regardless of that, so they fly you out to Salt Lake City. You appear in this wonderful setting, but you're in Salt Lake City, Utah. And so you're there for the interview. It takes 2 hours. And what happens? So you sit down, you think you have this understanding in place about what you're going to talk about, what you're not going to talk about. Yes. They've agreed to it. What happens in that 2 hours?
Okay, so they gave me 5 questions they wanted to discuss. And the host, Scott Christopher, who is a delightful human being.
Yeah.
About 10 minutes before, I said, okay, we're getting ready. And, I looked over the questions, and I love him. He says, I don't care about the questions. We're just going to wing it. It's like, okay, great. So we basically, I think we discussed one of the questions. My recollection is a little off right now, but we kind of just went, and I loved it. I really did. And probably that's why there was more rambling than usual, but it was beautiful. It was an open, free, heartfelt discussion, a thoughtful reflection for me. And I thought he had a beautiful, beautiful way of just allowing, in his language, the Spirit to lead us.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So it's go ahead, Bill.
That's okay. Let me throw up. Let me put up on the screen here, because I have that way of saying it.
Did you say throw up or throw out?
Like he does that all the time. He throws up on the screen like once a week at least.
Toss it up onto the screen. So let's address your first concern, or at least one of the concerns first.
Okay.
I noted that you are the rabbi that the church has proudly publicized in the past. Church News, the LDS Church has done several articles noting that you are a Jewish rabbi who is taking in General Conference and forging relationships with the LDS Church and its people. And you are the rabbi that Book of Mormon Central chose to sit down with.
Yeah.
And that they understood that you have a good relationship with the church, and that because of your interfaith work, you would be a safe bet, I think, to at least speak from a place of being informed about Mormonism, but also because of your interfaith work, you've got the experience to always find a way to be kind and charitable and compassionate, even if there's disagreement, and build bridges. And they discussed so-called evidence, as you're going to make the effort to not be deeply disagreeable. And you felt like in our episode about that I had issued, you said, quote, a gross mischaracterization about you. And I'd love to address that.
Okay.
What was it about the way I positioned that you felt I missed the mark?
Okay. And honestly, thank you for this opportunity. Thank you for asking the question in the way that you did. We all make misstatements. Sometimes they're simple, but sometimes they can also have an overtone or an undertone that is hurtful, or at least disregarding or disrespectful of the person. And I don't believe you meant it in that way, but I do feel it was received that way, not only by me, but by many of your, again, I can't judge you for the comments that are on your site. They tend to be somewhat mocking and condescending. It's not my, to use a word that I just learned from RFM, shtick.
By the way, I thought a lot of the comments were actually quite favorable towards you. I think
yes.
People from our perspective are very frustrated with the effort to make very weak things seem like strong evidences, or to position the church in a way that, in spite of whatever trauma or harm it causes, it always gets the benefit of the doubt.
Yes.
So you will see people be sort of snarky towards the church, but I actually, when I went back and looked at the comments, I thought they were quite kind towards you. And yes, there definitely were some that were rude.
Yes. Yes.
What was it about what I said that struck you the wrong way?
Yeah. So some of those clips will probably be played, but when you said, I didn't mean, you said, and again, we'll get the exact language, but it was almost exactly, he's the token rabbi. So I don't mean this in any negative way. And then you said, I'm the token rabbi that the church goes to. I'm not a token rabbi. I'm not a token anything that the church goes to. First of all, I reach out more than they do. In general, I reach out. When I was in Georgia, I went to over 50 churches to try and get some connection of interfaith with interfaith folk going. And I got 2 responses, and they were no. Lovely. Here's the thing. When you said I'm the token rabbi, and of course he's going to say something nice about the church. Hear me on this, please.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not a token anything, number one. And number two, yes, I will speak in a manner that is decent and honoring, but I'm never just going to say something nice because I happen to be invited on their show. I spoke with this about Brother RFM. We spoke, and it's not a Jewish teaching, but here's an example of how interfaith work has deepened me as a person. And everybody quotes it in the name of Rumi. The only people who quote it in the name of Rumi haven't read Rumi. Okay, they've read the Google. And please, folks, when you're looking up quotes, half of the quotes are going to be attributed either to Rumi, to Buddha, or to Jesus, because they're geniuses. But it's usually wrong. So the teaching in the name of Rumi that's really not, it's actually a Catholic priest from Spain, speaking of Spain, RFM. It's often attributed even in English to various poets, but it does have a source, and I don't know if they knew it was Rumi or not, but regardless, this teaching is one I hope that I at the very least, always have in my awareness, in my consciousness, and in my heart. And this will tell you why I do what I do and how and why I speak the way I do. Sorry for the rambling. Some people call me the Rambling Rabbi. It's actually a name I gave to myself. I gave that name to myself. But the idea here is why I'm not a token rabbi who will simply say nice things. I will always speak with respect, but I will never simply praise another faith because I am on their program. And I'm going to give you a reason why after, but two reasons. The first one is, here is a teaching, and it's actually, you can find it framed slightly differently in Buddhist thought. Buddhism is a brilliant, brilliant system of deep wisdom.
But it's nothing compared to the Book of Mormon.
Well, of course. I knew it was going to come back to that in a moment. That would have been a mute moment, brother. So here, this is perfect. Thank you for setting me up, RFM. The question is, if you're going to speak, this is a question you should always ask yourself. We should always ask ourselves, one, is it true? Is it true? That's necessary for us to ask because we want to speak truth. So even if what you said is true, RFM, right now, with the Book of Mormon reference, the next question, in addition to, is it true? Mute. I know what's coming. RFM.
It was required. I had to say that. Go ahead. What's the next step from this Catholic Spaniard?
Is it necessary? Oh, you're brilliant. You are a prophet.
And I thought I was pretty kind in saying it too. But go ahead. What's the third thing?
Oh,
I'm sorry. I'm stepping on your life.
You are helping me out. So is it true? And even if it is true, then you should say it. Thank you for the mute, RFM. I appreciate that. Is it true? And if it's true, is it necessary to say? It might be true, but just not necessary. And if it's true and if it's necessary, the real question is, the bottom line, the foundational question that ultimately helps in life with relationship is it true? Is it necessary? And is it kind? Period. And so that is the focus, the prism through which all of my speech hopefully is always filtered. And so am I going to say something quote unquote nice? Well, I hope what I say is at the very least kind, even if it's not my quote unquote truth, practice, faith, because who am I? Am I the holder of all truth? No. Does my faith have all the truth in the world? My ism? No. As one person said, every ism is a wasm. I don't get caught up in isms. My focus is on truth, which is one of the holy names of God in the rabbinic tradition. Is it true? And if I must say it, and it's true, ultimately, is it kind? Because I don't have to undo anybody's truth, even if I don't believe in it. That's not kind. And I'll tell you, you want to know what ultimately, foundationally shifted my approach to sacred dialogue, to interfaith dialogue? I was at a Baptist church in Georgia. Actually, it was called Second Baptist Church, but I kept wanting to find the first one. They kept calling them Second Baptist. And before I was to go and speak, we had a prayer session, a prayer moment, which I found very beautiful. And I was in the pews sitting. And they brought out a family that was in need of prayer. Beautiful family with children, mother and a father. But I saw one of the children who looked like she was about 9 or 10. And God bless her. God have mercy. But she looked like she was dying because her cancer came back. And it was so sad to see. And I was watching the mother barely hold it together as she was trying to walk her child out because the cancer returned. And I called everybody up to pray. And I have a child. I'm also a human. And I heard them pray. And I have had many interfaith dialogues, and they always ask me, will you speak about Jesus? And sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. They want to know why I don't believe in Jesus. I'd like to talk about other things, but what am I going to do? Well, when I saw that mother and that family weeping over their daughter, praying in the holy name of Jesus, with tears that I have rarely shed in my prayers, I thought, I will never, in a church of believers, I will never give a reason why I may not believe in Jesus as my Lord and Savior. Because who gives a blank why I don't believe it? The only thing that is helping this family continue is the hope in Jesus. And I'm not going to cut off the hope of a family who has already lost almost all hope as their beautiful daughter is dying before them.
Yeah.
Period. So I don't say anything unkind, and I don't tell people their faith is wrong if they're trying to live holy lives. Sorry.
And first off, thank you for the story, and thank you for telling us that those three things that you try and live by is it true, is it necessary, and is it kind? Because I think that's very helpful to me in using that prism that you use to view your interview on A Marvelous Work and understand why it is you're responding the way you respond.
Yes.
So you go 2 hours, right? And then it goes up in March, I guess it was. So probably less than a month or so, maybe a month after your interview. And you see it for the first time, I'm guessing on the internet.
Yes.
And you see your 6 minutes of glory, your 2 hours has been edited down to 6 minutes.
I knew it was going to be edited to 6 minutes.
Of course. It has to. I mean, it can't be all Rabbi Joe all the time. There has to be time for Donald Perry and some other people, like over in real Spain, like Ruiz. So
true, necessary, and kind.
True, necessary, and kind. I just do true, and true. That's my. But seriously, folks. No, so you see the 6 minutes, right? You see your 6 minutes, and what do you think?
My reaction was we spoke about discussing symbolism and my approach as a rabbi reading the text, not whether the text quote unquote proved or was evidentiary for anything Hebraic or ancient. And even though they gave some symbolism in terms of the olive tree allegory, they started off with the Hebraisms as if I discovered the 17 forms or 17 ands in Helaman.
Right.
I got that. I read their works to see what are they saying, just so I would know. But I can read. I read the Book of Mormon, and I can basically understand what the text is saying. But they made that out. I wasn't there to discuss only Hebraisms, but the symbolism. And I thought, oh, wow, you didn't highlight that, folks. And so I called one of them up, one of the gentlemen, and he agreed. And again, it's nothing, I don't think it was anything intentional or malicious. Again, I give the benefit of the doubt to people who I believe have decent hearts and kind hearts. And we all miss the mark. That's the foundational meaning of one of our Hebrew words for sin, right? Chet. It's to miss. It's actually biblical. It's an archery. It's a missing the mark. It's not hitting it exactly. We all do that, and we have to be charitable in understanding that we all make mistakes, and we don't have to necessarily assume the nastiest reason behind their mistakes. So I felt they made a mistake, and they told me we're going to do another one that is about 30 minutes. And I said, okay.
So if I can understand, I just want to make sure I understand that regardless of intent and discounting any evil intent, that they had made a mistake, and the mistake they made was editing 2 hours down to 6 minutes to make it really heavy on making it look like you're talking about Hebraisms in the Book of Mormon as evidence for its authenticity, as opposed to the symbolism that you wanted to discuss more. Is that correct?
I don't know if I can't say if what their intention was.
And I'm not even trying to get into their intention.
Right. So I don't know if they were thinking this gives more evidence. Maybe they were, maybe they weren't. But they certainly didn't highlight the symbolic dimension with a context. They might have quoted a segment of the symbolism on the allegory of the olive tree,
Right.
Jacob 5, but they didn't give the broader setup like they did in the interview. And I wish they would have focused more on that. And the one sentence, or if I wish they would have given one sentence like they did several sentences in the extended interview. They said, thankfully, or they allowed me to say, even if there are Hebraisms, what they prove is a separate matter, and that's not what I'm here to discuss. They did put that in the longer version.
Yes.
So it wasn't present, I felt.
So to be clear, there's 2 hours that you were interviewed, edited down to 6 minutes for the actual show. Then you called them and they talked to you about releasing an extended interview, which is up on the internet, which is 32 minutes. So that's basically a quarter of the total interview.
Right.
But at least it's 5 times more than what it was that was released on the show. And you felt that was more representative of your discussion.
I do. I feel that really broadened the focus and it gave a better sense, sorry, for what my hope was for coming on, to provide, again, a poetic reading as a rabbi, as a Jew, through the prism of Judaism, but of your text, as if it were my text, not whether it is or isn't, and to help understand why the Hebraisms are not necessarily true or evidence of an ancient text, but how those speak to me if it were a Hebrew text, because grammar teaches Hebraisms that sound strange in English are very instructive in the Hebrew. And that's how I work poetically.
Rabbi, one point I want to nail down. You called with your concerns about the 6 minutes editing of your interview. Did they volunteer to do the extended version in response to your call, or had they already decided they were going to do that before you called?
After the interview, they told me they were going to. This was before. When I called up and talked to one of the people, he said, we're doing an extended interview. And I said, okay, thank you. I still wish they would have edited slightly differently, but you know, when you're trying to do 6 minutes, you kind of have to have a little grace and mercy on what they put together.
Absolutely. In 6 minutes, I can understand for the show. But then again, if you're going to do an extended interview, I mean, you could just put up the whole 2 hours. There's nothing that says you've got to edit it again.
I'll tell them to send you the 2-hour interview and you can play it.
And the last question I have is, did you feel that I know you said the half hour of the 2-hour interview was more representative of what you had tried to communicate. Did you still feel it was lacking because of the hour and a half that wasn't there?
Well, of course, because you didn't get to hear all my brilliance.
Okay, that'll do it. Maven wants to join in.
Yeah.
15 seconds. I feel I'm not a Hebraic scholar. I don't use the word scholar for myself, but as a person who does really root into language and metaphor and symbolism and poetry through the texts of my sacred heritage, I feel that they could have set up some of the grammatical dimension or the Hebraic dimension a little better, but I thought it was a very fair and wonderful offering. I only wish they would have allowed for 5 seconds more on one section when we were talking about shalom and aloha. We laughed after that. Yeah, when I said shalom for the rabbi, when you don't have a lot of authority in your synagogue, if you have a board, they can say shalom to you, which means not only hello, but goodbye. He said, oh, it's like aloha. And I said, yeah, which means hola and sayonara. And we all laughed, but they cut that off. So I wish we would have had that moment. But that's a minor concern.
Okay.
All right. Sorry.
I just wanted to, no, all good. No, I just wanted to jump in because it's occurred to me, Rabbi Joe, that with your interfaith work, I feel like the audience that we are here might be a really different audience than you're used to working with. And I guess it's kind of causing some problems, I think, with our chat and with our audience. Again, just I think it's just maybe some miscommunications going on. So I just want to call some attention to that. I think
Okay.
for a lot of us in the chat and a lot of us who have left the church, there's a lot of deep pain and
Yes.
anger and anguish at feeling deceived, at feeling lied to, at feeling really controlled for a lot of our lives. And so I feel this way. I feel that I was genuinely harmed for the majority of my life by my membership of the church. And so while a lot of us understand this, and I don't blame you for the interfaith work that you do. We think that's great. I think the problem is when we try to express these things to people who are still in, or even to leaders of the church
Mhm.
about these especially really harmful behaviors. A
Yeah.
lot of times what they will do is avoid directly answering the question, or avoid even acknowledging the impact and the pain and hurt. And a lot of times what we get are kind of sermons that walk around something
Yeah.
like that, and it feels like this is what we're getting from you. And I feel like it's a really different situation. I don't think it's coming from the same place, but the patterns are there, the language is there. And I just found it really interesting that just me sitting here, I'm
Mhm.
feeling kind of this angst and anxiety sometimes when you're talking, Rabbi Joe, when it seems like you're going away from a direct question that was asked, and we're taking like a walk around the park to come back, because that's been done to us so many times as a way that feels really manipulative, and in a way uh, to obfuscate or to not answer the question. And so I think, and I'm seeing it in the chat, so I know it's not just me, but it just feels so similar to I think some of the hardest parts about leaving the religion. And so I just wanted to bring that up to you, because again, I think we're a different audience than you're used to, and I'm certain that I saw a surprise on your face just a little bit ago. So I don't know. I just wanted to share it. This is
Thank you.
how I'm feeling. And so I think um again, because of this, the obfuscation, we really appreciate and value when people can answer questions more directly, because I guess I don't, it feels calming to me. It feels like it's just something that we've always wanted it, and especially when it comes to things like child abuse, or Joseph Smith marrying 14-year-olds. We want to be able to ask something like, do you think that's okay? Do you approve of that or support that? And what we prefer to hear now is just a straight no, or even a yes, if that's true, rather than a walk, that I guess. So I'm seeing in the comments, I think people are agreeing with me. So, and I know we have a lot of things to go over. So I feel bad for asking for
No.
this, Rabbi Joe, but because it's not about you, but I think it's a need, I think, for me and for our audience. If Yeah, to just have more direct answers to questions. And I know that might be really difficult for you, and that might not feel authentic to you, and it might seem harsh to you, but these might be just really difficult, different forms of communication. And I'm hoping we can at least try,
Okay.
as an audience, we can try to hear you, and I can try to push down the anxiety that I'm feeling when I feel like questions aren't being answered. And I hope that if it may seem harsh to you, you might be able to kind of meet us halfway in that regard. And
Okay. Can you
that's
can
what
you
I wanted
stay can you stay with us on screen for just a moment where I can try to
Yeah,
address your concerns? I don't read the comments that when they come up, so I've apparently missed that. Uh, I'm not quite sure. First of all, we weren't talking about child abuse. We weren't talking about
right.
how many wives Joseph Smith may have had. The questions that I heard asked of me were how I approached the sacred. Why was I on this program at all? These were very personal, biographical, contextual questions directed to me, not whether I
Yeah,
think child abuse is wrong. And I know,
right.
period.
Or
No.
evidence, really,
Yeah, but
because
I'm not, but
point
we
of the
didn't
show is,
discuss the evidence. I
yeah.
wasn't there ever.
Yeah.
I don't know if
Can I jump in for just a second, Joe?
yes.
Um, for most people who are truly investigating the problems of Mormonism or have stepped away, an open discussion about all of it. So, for instance, Book of Mormon Central, as an apologetic arm of the church, framing evidences in a deceptive way, and whether you agree with me or not, my audience will have that point of view and I will have that point of view.
Fine.
Is part and parcel with all the other unhealthiness that's out there. It's all connected. It's all the trauma that post-Mormons or doubting Mormons have had. And it's all connected. So when we have a conversation about what your purpose was with Book of Mormon Central, and if there's any indication of them misusing you or being deceptive in any way with the evidences that they presented, that goes right along with Joseph Smith marrying 14-year-old girls or current church leaders claiming certain things that turn out to be blatantly false, or the church's business arm operating in unethical ways, or the church getting in trouble with the SEC and having to pay a large fine. And so
it all feels the same.
When you said earlier, like, I don't want to tear down anyone's faith, amen to that. And it's easy to see us as the people tearing down faith. But folks, I would ask you to be kind and compassionate in the comments, but to share why you don't see us as tearing down faith, but rather liberating you from a high demand fundamentalist religion, which manipulated you your entire life and traumatized you. And so all we're doing is, we're like in a sense, the the documentary Spotlight that shined a light on the molestation by priests in the Catholic Church. We're trying to constantly address, as truth tellers, why the church is operating in ways that are manipulative and dishonest. And so you may see us as tearing down faith, but there are tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of people who express gratitude that we liberated them from a high demand system that was abusive towards them.
Okay. So if we have I honestly don't care how far we get into the video segments. And if we end with this because of time or just lack of interest in this particular discussion, let these be the words that you ultimately hear. First, I saw one comment about she's proud of you, or he or she was proud of you, Maven, and it was very brave of you. I don't know what's brave about it, just simply sharing your feelings with me. I'm an open-hearted person, and I care about other human beings who are suffering. There's nothing brave about saying to me, your faith has harmed you deeply. And that's true for all faiths. And I would leave my faith if it harmed me deeply. But what I wouldn't do is charge a person who is speaking about the beauty of faith and the beauty of the ideal. That's not, whatever you think of the Latter-day Saint faith tradition, I don't think that's the ideal of a saintly life. How you were treated, what was done to you. Whatever priests have done to human beings, and I don't care if the priestly or the Catholic world in the beginning suppressed it, I think that's obscene. Okay, I don't obfuscate and I don't try and work around. If something is done in the name of religion that is ugly, it is foul, and in fact, in the 10 Commandments, for the Jewish way of counting, it's slightly different from the Christian way, but we're just one off. But not to take the Lord's name in vain. In Hebrew, it's not to lift up or carry the name of the Lord in vain. And if we get any comments that I'm not answering the question directly, okay, hear this, folks, up front. I'm giving you my reasons. It's obscene when people live lives that represent the holy and then live like the devil. That's not godly. That's not holy. And I hope there is a place in the deepest part of Dante's Inferno that they suffer for, unless they come to a deep place of repentance and make amends with their fellow human being. So up front, religious people who live unholy lives.
Amen.
Period. I'm not going to say the expletive.
I think I just wanted to.
Yes, but please, let me just, I have to say this, very important. I've had people, Latter-day Saints, come to me. I've had Jews come to me who leave faith. I've had every faith, and I would have left too. Please don't give me the benefit of the doubt. Give me some charity in your judgments. I'm not speaking about the pain and the trauma. I would have left. I have a deep, deep relationship with a blessed friend who left Orthodox Judaism, my faith, because of what a rabbi did to him. And it ain't the first and it won't be the last. And I would leave too. And that's a place that our hearts as people of faith have to not only directly face and face with a broken heart and serve you better to bring you back to a place of not wholeness, because you may never be able to recover that wholeness that was broken because of your faith. I am here with you. I will sit with you. I will talk with you. I will mourn with you. And I'm not saying you guys are tearing down anything. I was here to talk about how I felt I was misjudged. Period, folks. Not about what the church did or didn't do to you. If it did it to you, I am with you. And I accept your hearts and your pain.
Thank you. I'm sorry I wasn't very clear. And the reason why I brought those things up is I just want to try to request for more direct answers. I think that would be helpful to us if you're
Depends
able
on the
to.
nature
But thank
of
you
the
so much.
question.
That was very heartfelt.
Okay, and I will be as direct as possible. But when you're asking, when it's a poetic question or a metaphoric question, that's not yes or no. And I deal the same way with scripture. People want a yes or a no. And the truth is it's both and probably much more than we'll ever know. But on the direct question of the evil that religion has brought into this world in the name of a holy God, that is demonic. And it is ugly, and it is foul, and it is a blemish on the name of God. Period. It is not lifting up of the holy. It is condemning of the human. And I am with you.
Thank you, Rabbi.
All.
Yeah.
So,
I think I'll leave it to RFM, the lawyer, to ask the direct questions,
Okay.
and they won't be very
Fair
poetic.
enough.
But I'll
let
go
me
back in the
apologize,
comments where I
RFM,
go.
for-
Thank you, Megan. Thank you.
Thank you, Maven. I can see you down there, but thank you. Thank you, Rabbi. That was, I think that was a very important
Yes.
discussion we had.
Yeah.
And thank you for bringing that up, Maven. Thank you for your response, Rabbi. If I can just bring it back here just to tie this off and hand it off to Bill again. I know this stuff. I was an apologist for over 10 years, heavy into it in the 1980s. I mentioned that to you, Rabbi.
Mhm.
So when I'm watching the 6-minute interview of you, I know there's all sorts of other stuff that's not being said, okay, about Jacob 5 and the allegory of Xenos. So the thing that happened is that I then watched the extended interview, which was 32 minutes. And all of a sudden, I am seeing you saying things that I was thinking were being missed. And I realized that those hit the cutting room floor and gave a presentation of you that, at least to me, was certainly not complete. And when I watched the whole thing, or at least the 32 minutes of the 2 hours, the extended interview, I said, yeah, he knows this, he said this, he knows this, he said that, and he knows this, and he said that. So just want to let you know that eventually, hopefully we'll get to those clips. We're at an hour now. Bill, back to you, my friend.
Yeah.
We'll continue.
Let me start off. The first concern of yours was the token rabbi. Let me deeply apologize to you. I was trying to convey, sometimes when you do a live show, you have to come up with language very quickly to try to articulate an idea. Sometimes I think I'm great at it, and sometimes I make a complete blunder.
He's usually good.
I usually blunder.
In this instance, I was trying to convey to our audience that you are the rabbi that the LDS Church has put on the front page of its news at various times to indicate, like, hey, look, everybody, there's a Jewish rabbi who takes us seriously. And if you understood, again, I don't just, you spent time in Mormonism more than probably almost any rabbi that I know of for sure. But as a Mormon all my life, the church uses these moments to convey that the church is true. And I can't explain it in 3 minutes, but
I understand what you're saying.
The church is constantly misusing data points to prove that it's true. And I simply wanted to say, if Book of Mormon Central was going to go and find a rabbi that they could sort of depend on, was going to be charitable towards Mormonism and its sacred text. because I also hear you. And by the way, audience, I think, Joe, I really do understand you well. You come to this not really debating historicity at all, probably
Correct.
not even the documents of your own faith. Rather, how can we help people in this moment
Yes.
make use of sacred text to gain wisdom and to improve their life? And
Yeah.
I see you doing that.
Thank you.
I just wanted to note to the audience that you are the rabbi that they would have gone to. That makes sense. And that the church has utilized your faith, face, and position to sort of give a nice fluffy story about how awesome General Conference is or how awesome the LDS Church is. And so for any offense I caused you, I'm deeply sorry about that.
Thank
Very
you.
much.
Thank you. And I know that we all make misstatements. I know it wasn't from a place of mocking and condescending. I understood what you meant. I don't say nice things if there's nothing in my heart that believes it. Okay? If I feel the faith is bringing darkness and something unwholesome and unholy into the world, I will not go on their program or defend, not quote defend, but try to bring something beautiful out of their tradition.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I admit up front. Before I say what I admit up front, I don't, to emphasize, and we'll probably get into it in a little more detail, the historicity is not my focus. It never was.
Yeah.
That is true. And I said that in the interview. I don't know about a lot of my own texts. That's not the evidence that I look for, quote unquote evidence. The evidence that I look for in a sacred text is a transformed life, a transformed heart, okay? That decency and light and love and compassion and forgiveness and mercy are being lived by that person because of their text. And for those who have been harmed by that faith, I respect and honor and say, you know what? You did the right thing by leaving. I would simply, my only issue is, please hear this, friends. It may have been that dark for you, but what I don't do, and this is across the board, I do not tell other people whose lives are being enriched and blessed and enhanced to leave a faith because it broke me. And there was a monster in my faith that harmed me or many thousands of other people. If it's working for them, I view that faith as right and necessary and beautiful for them. That's my bottom line. It is in no way taking a position. And in fact, I am with all of you out there who have left because of your pain. And I would just say, I haven't experienced that, and I don't know most of your stories, but I have listened to many as a person of the cloth who hears many different people's stories, their sagas and their sorrows, because they speak to me because they know I am a person who will hear their hearts and not try to bring them back with some pious drivel to their faith.
Right.
Period.
Yeah.
Now,
Appreciate
Rabbi,
that.
just so you know, that's my bottom line too. We share
Okay.
bottom lines. I think it's Bill's bottom line as well.
Yeah.
Because I've said many times, I'm not here to try and take people out of the Mormon church.
Okay.
The LDS church worked great for me for about 10 years.
Mhm.
And after that, it was just my stubbornness that
Yeah.
led me to be in it for, decades after that. But it worked great for me for a period of time. And then I grew beyond it. And if it works, so I know it can work great for people because it worked great for me for a period of time. If it works great for you, wonderful. God bless you. Go prosper and have a good time. But
And we're not knocking on doors. We put out a program that for people who are looking to investigate deeper, to understand why things don't seem to add up in their world around their faith.
Yes.
We're a program that's offered to them. RFM, I want to turn time over to you if you're ready to talk about the Joe taking issue with him being in Spain.
No, we can skip that. That's just a minor detail.
I can do that really quick too, and we don't have to play clips. But I do want to say, Bill had said it's hard for me to explain how the church does this and use people to try and prove that their church is true. And he says, I couldn't explain it in 3 minutes. And I said, well, I could explain it in 6 minutes. Just play it, baby, because that's exactly what's going on. Anyway, in my opinion. So, and I think that's why something behind why it was that you were a little bit put out with the way it was assembled, because it made it look like you were vouching for the ancientness of the Book of Mormon, perhaps more than you intended to come across.
At all.
Yes. Yeah. And so, I mean, I've certainly seen people and their comments to it. Lots of people have watched your interview, by the way, the 6-minute interview. A lot of people have watched the 30-minute interview too. Not as many as have watched the 6-minute interview, but a lot of those comments, people are just, wow, this rabbi, he gets it. He believes the Book of Mormon is true.
How many? And what's the wait? Not that many watched my 30-minute interview. I'm hurt.
There's still many thousands. Don't worry about it.
30,000.
71,000.
You're going up in the polls. But the second part of Marvelous Work, where you have the 6-minute interview, is much more than that. That's what I mean. And a lot of people are sitting there saying, wow, this rabbi, he believes the Book of Mormon is true. That's the impression they're taking away from the 6 minutes. And that's when we covered it the last time, I said, well, of course he doesn't believe the Book of Mormon is true. If he did, it wouldn't be Rabbi Charnes. He'd be Elder Charnes.
Yeah.
Brilliant. And I'm telling you, how did I sign most of my names in my email to you guys?
Elder Charnes.
Elder Charnes. Amen,
Yes.
folks. Hallelujah. Can we get a mutual amen here?
You're going to have to get a white shirt, a tie, and ditch the yarmulke.
That was funny, Bill. I saw what you did.
Yeah, well, yeah.
Really? What did you do?
I shook a handkerchief across the.
Was that the Hosanna shout?
It was the Hosanna shout from Mormonism. Yeah.
Dab some of the sweat off my forehead. Amen.
Yeah.
The deal that you know is that if Bill is doing it out of time, then he's doing his Elder Oaks impression.
And if it's in time,
then it's President Nelson or Iron. Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
Do you want to briefly explain
me.
Spain
Oh, yeah, about
thing?
the Spain. Because one of the things you had said about was Spain, without going through the clips, okay? This is why it was confusing to me. We have the clips ready. Let's go ahead and play the clips. Because you said, why do you think I'm in Spain? I'm not in Spain. And I said, well, I could have sworn I thought you were in Spain. And the reason why is because of the way they set it up, okay? And there's 3 brief clips, all right? You are the very first person who gets interviewed. First off, Scott Christopher, who does seem like a very, very nice fellow, is in Spain. That's where it starts. He's in Spain. And he says, not only am I in Spain, but we're going to start. Okay, go ahead, let's play this clip. Is this the very first one?
Yes, it is.
Okay, this is the first one with Scott Christopher A.
Yeah.
Let's see.
So if we plan to discover and understand symbolic and literary evidences within the Book of Mormon, we should start in España. Jacob 5.
We should start in España. Now, I think, I took German in high school, not Spanish, but I think that means Spain. So we should start in España. And then we go immediately to who? You.
I'm a Spanish
so the next part, right? So they go into the credits, the opening credits, and then they go to this. So this is where they're going to start in España. And hello, Rabbi Joe.
As I begin my search for literary evidence in the Book of Mormon, I first want to investigate its claim of rich Hebraic symbolism. And what better way to do so than to speak with a Jewish rabbi?
That's you.
Wow.
That's you. You're first up. So we're going to begin in Spain. We go immediately to you and kind of foreign looking. I mean, it's a synagogue, apparently, you told us, in Salt Lake City. But that's why I thought it was in Spain. And not only do they do that, the second person that Scott Christopher goes to after you is Donald Perry at BYU. It's clear he's at Provo, looking down on the city, talks to Donald Perry for a few minutes. Then he leaves Donald Perry and he says, guess what? I'm going back to Spain. Can we play the clip?
Thank you so much. This has been really,
Perry.
just really, really appreciated. This is so great to be able to continue to amass this evidence. Thanks so much.
What a privilege and opportunity. Thank you.
You got it.
Here we go.
So as we continue our search for literary evidence within the Book of Mormon, we are now going to head back to Spain.
Heading back to Spain.
The allegory of the olive tree from Jacob 5.
So that'll stop there in a second. So the whole thing is that they're talking. So you understand why it was that I came away with the impression that you were in Spain, because that's the way they set it up, intentionally or unintentionally. I don't know why it was they did that, but that's why I thought you were in Spain.
Okay.
However, they're also bracketing everything, even before they get to your 6 minutes of fame in that movie. They're talking about, we're looking for literary evidence of the Book of Mormon. And then we're going to go back to Spain. We're going to continue to look for literary evidence of the Book of Mormon. So I can see, number one, why it was they edited it the way they did, and why it was that you saw it and had the reaction that you did. Okay. So that was the whole Spain thing. But I noticed,
here, let me fulfill the requests of hopefully the hearts. Did you see the prayer book, that red prayer book in the segment where it said Lev Shalem? That means a whole heart, a peaceful heart, a full heart. I hope that regardless of wherever we wander, my hope is that we all leave with a heart that is, however it's been broken. I hope that there is more fullness and wholeness and peace of heart as a result of our dialogue together. But I accept it's not a major point. Thought it was kind of funny. So
yeah, it was funny. We had the clips.
I agree with you there.
I wanted to show them mainly to say, hey, look, creative editing, creative license, poetic license. I get it. I don't think they actually went to Spain 2 times. I mean, if they did, that was a huge problem with their planning. So I don't think they went to Spain twice, but they organized it in such a way that they had you, and then they go back to Spain. It led to some unnecessary confusion. So I think that's not a big deal. I think it is something that we can see that they can change the narrative a bit in order to give a certain impression that apparently they want to give for whatever reason. I don't know, but they're definitely after the literary evidence. So we've got that. And then what do we have next, Bill?
Yes, let me jump into. So, by the way, I just want to note, almost certainly they only went to Spain once. Flight costs, production cost, all of that. Sure. Again, it's more for the video narrative, not really what actually happened. Okay, next, Joe, the other thing that, several things that you had brought up, but let me put this one up. Slideshow. So I had noted the insensitivity in discussing the allegory of the olive tree with a Jewish rabbi, that in part, the allegory of the olive tree deals with the Jewish people rejecting Christ, the decay of the tree, the pruning of the tree, the burning of the withered branches, and the scattering of the Jews, seems to indicate some sort of involvement of God's role in the suffering of the Jewish people across time. And there seemed to be something about me saying that, or the way I said it, that you wanted to talk about this point. So please.
This was a clarification. I think that many people will agree with you and many may disagree with me. Your language was, it was assailing. That's my recollection. It was assailing. This narrative, this allegory is how insensitive it is. And an amazing Maven also brought it up, of how insensitive Mormons, quote unquote, can be in bringing up an allegory that is ultimately talking about replacing the Jewish people. And here he is talking with a rabbi about a narrative or an allegory replacing the Jewish people. How insensitive. And Mormonish brought that up also, apparently. And in fact, one of the hosts of Mormonish made what I thought was just ultimately just a wrong statement. And he said that, and the rabbi didn't even understand the story was talking about replacing the Jews. He's like, I understood it. Give me a brain, credit for having a brain. And thank God his guest said, no, he understood it. He was just being nice. So the focus for me on that story, on the allegory of the olive tree, was again, not to discuss whether it is speaking ultimately of the replacement with the grafting in of the Jewish people. By the way, that's standard church history in many church circles, that the church has replaced Israel. We missed the boat. in terms of Jesus. And so the church has now replaced us. Wonderful. That's nothing new. What I said I would do on the story is take a segment, again, that I would read if it were my text in this way. I will find something, it is an allegory, so I will read it in a Jewish way through the prism of what we again call midrash, the searching, seeking, poetic, symbolic way of reading a sacred text, and tell you this is how, or one way I would read it. That's all I was there to do. And I don't see, because a text may talk about replacing the Jews or speak of Jews or anybody going to hell if they don't believe in Jesus, I don't see that as anti-Semitic. I simply don't. It's a different theology. Certainly anti-Semites might take hold of that, but just because it is speaking of Jewish replacement doesn't mean it's assailing the Jews or it is anti-Semitic. That was my only point. And there are a lot of Jews who disagree with me. People say the New Testament is an anti-Semitic document. I think you can find anything you want, and anti-Semites will. You could give them an IKEA manual for a bookshelf, and they would find a reason to condemn Jews. The Jewish New Testament, for Jews, the New Testament, it is anti-Semitic. I read the New Testament, I study it, and I understand how they could see that. But I would also say, if you read it, I don't think Jesus would be in a congregation, or Paul, or Matthew, or Mark, or John, with anti-Semites. In the epistles of John, and then again, I'm not a Messianic Jew, folks. I study the New Testament, but I'm not a Messianic Jew. I just find beautiful wisdom in it, even though I sometimes part ways. In the epistles of John, first epistle of John, he asks, it's one of the most beautiful questions and the most beautiful answers in the world of the sacred. If you say you love God but hate your brother or sister, you are a liar.
And the truth is not in you.
Amen. I'll say amen to that. Or in Hebrew, amen. So that was the only issue. Can you disagree with my theology, even to the point where I may be in the eternal land of flames and toast? I don't think that's particularly charitable or loving or merciful or forgiving, but that's my theology. As long as you treat me in a way that is honoring and respectful, I don't care. Yeah. It's not necessarily anti-Semitic.
Yeah, you didn't take it that way, and you are aware that it could have been taken that way.
Absolutely.
You weren't naive to it.
And absolutely has been.
Yeah, and I would only note here, and we'll move on from this one.
Right.
I would only note here, the way the church presents it, there's certain verses that are attributed to, this is the church's. The church often gives graphics to its seminary students and talks about what things mean in its manuals. The second visit of Christ is those verses that start at, I think, like verse 20 maybe, and then moves to about verse 30. And again, I'm not trying to start anything. I just want to note it to the audience.
Yes.
Verse 26, in light of what happened in World War II.
Yes.
Verse 26, pluck off the branches that have not brought forth good fruit and cast them into the fire. I think there is, at least for some, reason to go, man, that's certainly insensitive language in light of the history that has happened. Now, again, obviously the Book of Mormon comes long before World War II, but there's sort of the modern reader reading it in that context and often led to think of dispensations of the gospel and how the gospel comes and goes and who has authority. And so I just want to note that yes. I think there is room for some people to also take offense and see it.
Absolutely.
So appreciate it. Awesome.
And I would simply say one sentence, even if that is a legitimate, and it is a legitimate read, Bill, what you said, and many Christians have used it, that idea. But I would simply ask, has there ever been a Mormon or a Latter-day Saint who has used that text to burn Jews? The truth is no.
Right.
And that's why I don't believe that that's what it is intended to mean. It is an allegory. It's symbolic, even if we disagree on the meaning of the symbolism.
Right. Perfect. The next one here, let me put this one up. So the next one here, you wanted to respond to spiritualizing of the allegory of the olive tree. I think in some ways we may have already covered this. If you feel so, we can just skip past it.
One sentence. my entire purpose for being there, what we're calling spiritualizing RFM and Bill, that is a way of midrashic, what we call it's a genre of reading a Jewish text called midrash. So midrashic, poetic, symbolic, spiritualizing way. That is how I read texts, and that was my purpose for coming on the show, to read that text with a spiritualizing, midrashic, metaphoric intent.
Yeah. You are, again, I mean, it's in the most kind way and positive. Like, you are sidestepping the issue of historicity
or bracketing
out of an effort to draw in that conversation the viewer to a sacred text and the available wisdom and help that lies in every sacred text. You would have done this with the Bhagavad Gita. Absolutely. You would have done this with the Quran. Yes. You would have done it with any text that was sitting in front of you.
Right.
The Book of Mormon isn't any more special than any of those.
I think they're all equally special. And I simply would say I'm not sidestepping. I am focusing directly on what my intention and purpose is.
Perfect.
If we discussed the history, I'm not a Latter-day Saint.
Yeah.
Period. I am not a Hare Krishna. I am not a member of any Hindu faith tradition. That doesn't mean I have to discuss whether I think it's true or not. I don't know. I don't know about my own faith. Yeah. I am there to discuss the depth and the beauty of a sacred text that can help all of us heal, especially those who are hurt, and of those who have been hurt by a faith. We need to give them real presence of heart and wisdom and soul, and lead them in a way that helps bring back wholeness from the real tragedy and evil that was done to them, even if it means, or especially through another faith tradition or of no faith tradition, just simple presence.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's why I was suggesting that maybe Bill might have used a different phrase instead of sidestepping it. That's why I was saying, or maybe bracketing the issue of historicity in favor of looking at the symbolism and talking about
bracketing. I'm not, again, it's not a bracket.
It's not a bracket. That's what I call it.
I am directly focusing on what my intention was.
Yes.
Yeah.
Period.
Your agenda didn't include historicity.
No.
Yeah.
And I was very clear about that.
And I think, to your point, there are lots of viewers of Book of Mormon Central's work who need Mormonism to be true. Their entire life would fall apart if it wasn't. Yes. And so I also want to grant, while I may disagree with their methods of doing so, there are people who can't afford to lose their faith today.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. The next one, RFM, do you want to talk for a moment about Scott Christopher?
Oh, these are different. Okay. I hadn't seen these before, but these are the clips. Now we're to the extended interview with you, Rabbi, the 32 minutes. So I've made some clips here, 9 of them actually, and just want to talk about them and get your take on them, give my take on them. By the way, before we leave, your issues with our discussion that we did before that included you. Yes. I just want to note, in case anybody has not noticed this, that they all have to do with things Bill said, and none of them have anything to do with what I said. Okay? All right.
That's because you're a saint, RFM.
No, it's because I was muted.
You know, I have to tell you this. It's beautiful. I was on a panel with several faith community leaders. I'm on it every year with different faith representatives. And I was late, well, pretty late. And there were 2 seats left, and I sat in the second from the end. And I had like 5 minutes left, so I was breathing a sigh of relief that I made it. And there was 1 seat sitting next to me to the right. And who comes and sits down but a Latter-day Saint? And when we announced who we were, the MC says, "Okay, you start, Latter-day Saint." And he says, "I'm so-and-so from the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints." And then he asks, "Okay, you, Joe, go now." And I said, "Well, then I'm from the Church of the Former-day Saints." So you are a Latter-day Saint, RFM. That's why nothing that in my comments is speaking to what you said.
Well, it surprises nobody in the audience that it was the Mormon who was the last person to arrive, and he was later even than you.
It's Jewish Standard Time. What do you want?
What are you talking about? That's Mormon Standard Time.
Well, then how come the Mormons or the Latter-day Saints always come for our Sabbath meals 15 minutes early? I always know who's knocking at the door 15 minutes early. It's the Latter-day Saint.
Well, I guess if food is involved, they'll get there early, but otherwise they're going to be late every time. So here we go. Here's this first one. Now, I went back and I looked through the 32 minutes, and I did it again yesterday. I'd done it before. I did it again. I found 3 times where Scott Christopher is trying as best as he can to get you to put your thumb on the scale of Book of Mormon historicity via the Hebraisms. And here's the first one. And I also really enjoy looking at the expressions on your face during some of these points where he's asking the question. So if we can just play this one. This is just his question, not your response.
Right. Okay. So for that one, for example, seems to be really rich with possible connections to ancient Hebraic biblical passages and other things. For those that read that, even in English, those of us who are not biblical scholars, it kind of jumps off the page as feeling very connected to the Bible, like it sounds biblical. And by that I mean the Jewish Bible. It sounds like the first 5 books of the Old Testament.
Yeah. So
what's your take on that?
So there's the first one. There's the first question where he's trying to get you away from the symbolism and into the evidence for it. I mean, the name of the video is how great the evidence. It's not how great the symbolism. Okay.
Yes, but he did start off in his introduction. He did mention symbolism in the introduction, which you played. So yes, but I understand what you're saying. And what I did say and we're
going to play your answer just so you know.
Good.
Yeah, we're going to play your answer.
I see what you're saying.
It'll get more pronounced as he gets to number 2 and number 3 attempts. But here's the first one, and here's your answer, where you are very studiously trying to stay focused on what it is that you came to talk about and what you thought the agreement was that you were going to be talking about. So here's your response.
Wait. Before you go, I said I will speak on Hebraisms.
Yes.
Not what they prove, but what a Hebraic phrase in Hebrew can symbolize more deeply. Understanding the grammar and the nuance, there is something very rich. Rabbis focus on grammar really, really closely because it's instructive. That was my intent.
Yes.
Of the Hebraisms.
Very good. Okay. Thank you.
I mean, in terms of, we have a couple of options. We have Hebraisms, which are essentially a Hebrew expression with the Hebrew grammar and syntax and structure.
Yes.
That is basically recreated in the target language, in our case, English.
Right.
So it sounds wonderful in Hebrew, but it sounds sometimes clumsy.
In English or in the target language.
Yeah.
Was that it?
That was it for that clip. Yep.
Okay. Well, we're having some issues with our clips, but anyway.
That was the timestamp for it.
And it's sort of been back and forth and everything, but we'll get enough out there to make the point. And you completed your sentence as well, didn't you?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. And I thought it was in that one where it actually says, where you said, where you acknowledged that, well, of course there's Hebraisms in the text, but you said what it proves is a separate discussion.
Absolutely.
You remember saying that?
Absolutely.
Was that in that clip? Because I didn't hear it.
Yes, it's right after that. I believe it's right after, but I didn't memorize my lines because I didn't.
Yeah, Maven had all the clips right. It's just been back and forth. It's been a heck of a time. But anyway, yeah, you said what it proves is a different. Wait a second here, because I wrote it down here in my notes. You said what it proves is a separate discussion.
Right.
So if I were to give you like a minute,
Maven's saying it's in the next clip.
Discussion.
Maven says it's in the next clip here.
Is it? Okay, well, let's go to the next clip. And the next clip has to do with, let me see here.
The second attempt of Scott to get him to.
Is that where it is? Okay, well, this is the second attempt. And this is where he talks about Zenus and he starts laying it on real thick. And actually the question takes about a minute and a half to get out.
So what it sounds like to me, I mean, you're coming up and finding things that I've never heard anyone else mention before, and obviously it's from a different perspective.
Yes.
Someone that is more interested in the spiritual, religious side of our studies and our search for evidence. The thing that is kind of amazing to me is that there are so many potential evidences of some kind of connection. The fact that the book itself, this particular allegory, is the claim is that it was originally written by a prophet of Israel named Zenos, which no one's ever heard of. We don't have, it's not out there. There aren't plates or scrolls from the Dead Sea or anywhere else that mention, I don't think, this allegory or Zenos. But it sounds like it would almost be easier to believe that there was a prophet in ancient Israel named Zenos, based on everything that we've found and what we've heard from you. We could almost conclude it would be easier to believe that that's true than it would be to believe that somebody just made this up.
Take it away.
Rabbi Joe, what was going through your mind when he was lumbering his way through that question? Because 2 times you go from looking at him to looking kind of off there in the distance, like, okay, what am I going to do with this?
Well, I don't know about your crystal ball into my heart, RFM.
It's very clear.
Okay. Can you tell me the lotto numbers for next week? Again, we already said what my focus was to discuss and try to bring out something that I, as a rabbi, would read from this text as a rabbi. I often look up when I'm thinking. I look away. Sometimes I close my eyes. Sometimes I rock back and forth. I was thinking, how can I answer a question that honestly is not my focus in any spiritual dialogue, whether it proves or is evidence of, because I don't want to in any way, and I'm sorry for those who have been hurt by faith and want to find reasons not just to tear it down. This isn't a condemnation of anybody, but who don't want to see, again, this is my world, I don't want to see a reason to say your faith is wrong. And I wasn't there when Moses got the 10 Commandments, and I wasn't there when Joseph Smith got his revelation either. And it's not my focus, so I simply surrender to what my tradition, my Jewish tradition, teaches in my Talmud, in my oral tradition, which is the rabbinic wisdom commenting on the Bible. And it says this teaching, and I think it's a beautiful teaching that I try to live by. And it says, teach your tongue to say, I don't know. There are many times that I may think, but I don't know. That's the honest truth. I may have an inclination towards one or the other, but that's where, is it necessary for me to say yes or no? And also, is it kind for a person whose faith, as you said, Bill, they need to be true?
And that's what I was going to ask you. First off, you could tell what Scott was angling for, couldn't you?
Yes, I understood, and I understand what you're saying also. Yes.
Yeah. And so that might have been one of the circumstances where being truthful might not have been kind
or necessary. And I do feel, listen, it's very hard for me. I am not in any way discounting what has happened to so many of your listeners and people in your community. I am not discounting. In fact, I am affirming the pain and the struggle that they have experienced directly by being in your faith tradition, as people have in my own, in the Catholic, in every faith. Mm-hmm. Okay. What was I going to say now? What was the question again?
What you were going to say is that you could see what he was.
So here's what I struggle with. It's very uncomfortable for me to say that the founder of another person's faith was a liar. People ask me all the time about the Christian New Testament. Well, the apostles all said they saw him, Joe, that he was risen. Are they lying? Well, I'm not comfortable saying anybody who is lying because it might be a different narrative or a different vision of the sacred. I wasn't there, and I'm not comfortable saying, yes, they were lying. I don't know, but I do know that it brings deep meaning and value and light to your life. So I'm just uncomfortable with that language.
Right.
Whether it's true, quote unquote, that you can culture it in a petri dish truth or not. I look at the life of a person who has lived it, and I sympathize and walk with the person whose life has been broken by it. So please, I didn't read any of the comments that were before, but again, please hear my voice, see my heart, and understand it is with you in your brokenness, in your anger, in your frustration, and I am walking with you.
And we are going to be playing your response to that question. I just wanted to isolate it so that we could talk about it before we got to your response. But I will say before we get to your response, though, am I safe in presuming that you do not believe that the Book of Mormon was written by some ancient Jews who left Jerusalem and came over to the Americas and wrote it down on metal plates?
So you had to go there.
It's a yes or no question. Am I safe in assuming that?
I will tell you, and I'm waiting. I'm going to start reading the comments on this one, folks. What was the question again? No.
I can repeat it. I'll have the court reporter read it back. Am I safe in assuming that you do not believe that the Book of Mormon was actually written by ancient Jews who left Jerusalem right before the Babylonian destruction and came over to the Americas and wrote their history on metal plates?
In Reformed Egyptian.
Darn it, Bill, that's what I was going to say. Could you say it in Reformed Egyptian?
Yeah.
I'm safe in presuming that you don't believe that, right?
Well, am I going to be, you're going to treat me as a hostile witness, Bill?
No.
Here's my answer. Here, honestly, I'm playing with you.
Your answer, sir.
My answer is, what was the question again? No, just kidding. My answer, honestly, is this, and I will say it. When a Christian woman who has lost her child asks me, do I believe that Jesus has her child in his bosom? My answer, honestly, and I mean this sincerely, is I am not a Latter-day Saint, and I am not a Christian, and nor do I claim to be a Hindu or any branch of Hindu thought. If I were any of those faiths, I would believe in that. I simply, the way I would frame it, I know you want a yes or a no, and I am giving you my yes and my no in a way that I hope is truthful, which it is, because that's necessary. Mm-hmm. But is it grounded in kindness? I am not saying, no, I don't believe. No, it's a falsehood. No, it's a lie. No, it's a fraud.
And I'm not asking any of those questions.
I am saying I am a member of the Jewish faith. That is my ground or grounding as far as sacred living. And I have questions about that. That is how I would answer it, rather than telling somebody or anybody, not somebody, anybody, that I feel it is not or what it is not. I would rather speak about what I am, and you can say, hey, I'm not answering the question directly. Wonderful. I am answering it.
It doesn't take me to say that.
Huh?
It doesn't take me to say that.
I am a practicing Jew. Okay. I'm not a practicing anything else, but I learn from everybody else. I am a practicing Jew. I hope that answers the question in a way that is honoring, but also revealing of who I am.
Yes.
If somebody were,
go ahead, Bill.
If somebody were, I think it's the Hindus who use the Mahabharata in the Bhagavad Gita, right?
Yes, that's part of the Bhagavad Gita is part of the
Mahabharata. Yep. In the Mahabharata, there are talking deer, and there's lots of fantastic, fantasy type events happening.
Yes.
Things that you and I would go, it's not really what the rational mind would come to believe. But in the same way, if somebody needed that to be true, you wouldn't, if somebody said, is the Bhagavad Gita fiction or is that really truth? If someone needed it, you're not going to squash it. You would answer the question in the same way.
I would say even if they didn't need it, I will tell you actually in the rabbinic world, in the Hasidic world, it's a manifestation and a practice starting in the 1700s they have the big black hats or the big furry hats and the side locks and everything else that goes along with that glorious living. The mystics and the Hasidim, they are mystically oriented. They speak of the rocks, even the rocks, stones calling out with divine wisdom and insight. I don't see it as literal necessarily, but if you do take a metaphoric, symbolic, poetic approach to life, the flowers speak, the fragrances call you. Okay, nature is sacred revelation, and we hear not necessarily with our ears, physically, but with our hearts and with our souls. There's a different way of hearing that is beyond the auditory alone. And that's what allows us to experience, not necessarily with sound waves that enter into the canal of our ears and go through the nerves up into our brains and are interpreted. This is a different way of hearing, and it doesn't mean it's false. I believe that we are more than simply blood and guts and souls and atoms. I believe there is another way of experiencing knowledge and light and beauty, and that can come from nature in all traditions, starting from the more primitive, quote unquote, or animistic traditions. They hear and see the divine light and wisdom everywhere, and I resonate with that. A sunset speaks to me in a language beyond simply the physics of sunset. It speaks to me in a way that enlightens. Beautiful. So I would say it's yes to what you said.
Beautiful. Okay,
yes, awesome. I'm sorry. What? Yes to what? Who said? Bill?
Never to what you said, RFM.
Yes, representing all sacred scripture. Absolutely. As delving into spaces that aren't really meant to be argued over historicity anyway.
Yes, because I believe history. I don't believe sacred texts are bound by history. I believe their origins, their ultimate quote unquote origins, are infinitely beyond.
And from that perspective, they transcend history.
Absolutely. So they are not time bound, and their forms are not limited to the human expression of language. The rabbis teach that the Bible, the Holy Bible, and all of our holy texts, I would make this generally, I would apply it generally to, they all speak in the language of human beings, because we can't understand an infinite mind with our finite minds. So we have to give it form and grounding. And then we take that form and understand the metaform and the the metaphysical aspect and the soulful that leads us into that great and mysterious beyond through form, but ultimately into the formless.
Do you have a boundaries? Do you have a line in the sand? And let me give an extreme example. Let's take Scientology's book Dianetics.
Okay.
If that's a religious text to that group of people.
Yes.
Scientology to almost all of us is absurd, but meaningful to the people who believe it. But also a lot of harm has been caused. Mm-hmm. There are lots of texts out there that are used to hurt people, but also have sacred meaning to the people who believe them.
Correct.
Believe it. Do you have a boundary, or would you frame it that way no matter what text we placed in front of you?
I absolutely have a boundary, and I probably didn't express it as clearly. I thought I expressed the foundation for my reference, and my reference is foundationally infinite. It is rooted in the infinite, that which is beyond, but also available within. And my reference ultimately in a human-centered context is always what we started with. Is it true? Is it necessary? And is it kind? I don't see Scientology, and I lived next to and had years of exposure and contact with the world of Scientology. Yes, they believe it is true and okay. But I don't think that any sacred text, this is my boundary, these are my boundaries, or one of my boundaries. If it divides people, if it divides families, it's not of the divine. Because the divine ultimately shines brightly and brings healing and communities and humanity together.
So is Scientology in that group or out of it for you?
No, I see them as dividing humanity. In my experience with them, they have not. And there are other religious traditions that separate. You can't see your family member once you convert. I don't see that as divine.
Do you see that as any different if you can't see your family member when you convert versus you can't see your family member forever in the eternities?
Right.
Would that be a similar thing for you?
It's a beautiful question. And here is where, it was very interesting. Several people in my Jewish communities that we've been in many Jewish communities, ask me, why do you go to evangelically oriented churches, fundamentalist churches, Baptist churches, conservative churches, non-denominational churches? Because they think you're going to hell forever. And what I say to them is, I don't care about people's eschatology. Ultimately, what happens in the great beyond. I care about how they treat me in the immediate now. And very often those who are theologically condemning me and all non-believers to hell because God is a loving and just, merciful and forgiving God, somehow they can resolve that. I can't. However, they treat me, I always say, like I'm in heaven. And so that's all I care about. If I'm wrong ultimately, and I'm going to be an eternal roasting marshmallow in that loving, merciful, forgiving God's judgment, I accept that. I did my best. I sought, and I, as a human being who is finite and makes mistakes, I failed. And I hope that I get some mercy from that God above. So I don't care ultimately how a person views my eternal place in the world beyond. My focus is how I am treated here on this plane, period.
Okay, thank you. Now, having concluded that part, we can actually get to your response now. Scott Christopher, because once again, he's given this like a minute and a half lengthy question where he's sort of talking about how for him, he thinks that, it would be easier to believe. Pay attention, Rabbi. If you weren't paying attention, then it would be easier to believe. Okay, it'd be easier to believe that that Zenos actually existed and wrote the allegory that's found in Jacob 5. It would be easier to believe that than to believe that it were simply made up by Joseph Smith. That was his question in a nutshell, and then throwing it to you.
Yes.
To get your response to that. And here's what you said.
Pray for me.
You did good.
So there's
at least that's my
kind of my, and it makes sense. And I struggle even within my own tradition. There are indicators or indications or evidentiary statements that we can find throughout. What do they quote prove? I'm not sure.
Nor should you make any declaration. Sure,
right.
certainly.
And everything that I've been speaking about up to this point, many may not see. Many may see you're reading into this, and I say up front, absolutely. We all read into the text.
That's what we're supposed to do, right?
Through our own prism. If I get a Buddhist to read it, he will see different symbolism.
Yes.
If you just want to see it on the simple level, you're right. But I don't believe in general that any sacred text that is grounded in wisdom is simple. There has to be something more. I may be wrong in reading that into it, but this is how Jews read the text. I'm not making this up because I have nothing better to do. This is a symbolic way of reading the text through one lens of the Jewish tradition.
Right.
So what I see there, Joe, what I see you doing there is taking a question that's asking for a certain response, which is to have you weigh in, kind of like I was doing about, well, do you believe that ancient Jews actually came over to the Americas and wrote their history on gold plates, and that was the Book of Mormon? I see you doing in your response to him kind of what you did with me, which is in the context of what you're there and what you understand you're to be there to do in this interview, you are not going to be taken off track, and you're going to focus on what it was that you came to talk about.
Yes.
All right. Did you want to say anything else about your response or that particular interaction with Scott?
I'm not a member of the Latter-day Saint faith community or of any of the other faith traditions on this planet. But I do learn from them, and my focus, and I get the same question in my own world. Do I believe Moses received the 5 books, the Torah, the 10 Commandments? And in the Jewish tradition, we have a broader understanding of what Moses actually received on the Mount Sinai, because he was up there 40 days. He had to get more than 10 Commandments. But this isn't the Jewish teaching tonight. It's not my focus, again, on whether Moses was on Sinai, or I think you say it in English, Hebron. I don't know where Moses received the mountain, on which mountain he received Sinai.
Or Horeb.
Or Horeb, that's how you say it in English?
I think so. I think those are the 2 names we have for the same mountain.
I don't know. I didn't know how to say it in English. I'm sorry. Horeb. Yeah. We say Horeb. What did I say?
Hebron.
Oh, I'm sorry. Well,
that's in Israel, right?
I've had too much water to drink. Sorry.
I thought it was Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, I meant Hebron. Horeb. Yeah. There you go. I don't know what I'm saying. Yeah, I don't know which mountain he received it on.
I'm here for you.
And thank you. Bless you. I don't know. And ultimately, my concern is, again, whether it's Zenos or Moses or Krishna or Ganesh. Do I think there's some God out there with a trunk, as an half elephant, half human? What I do look for is, what does that metaphor, that imagery, that symbolism produce, period. And I know that frustrates people, but I don't, my focus is not, what people often do is they read their own pain, their own vision, their own struggles into what another person is saying. Mm-hmm. I am not here, and I was never here to in any way. I don't even know how it came up, honestly, personally. I wish, and I try to do this, I have my own pains and my own struggles. I don't impose them on another person whose path or practice is different. I am here to discuss what is beautiful about faith and what we can learn from each other, because we need each other. And the pain that we all struggle with, sometimes tragically from faith, needs to be addressed. But that's a different question than why I was on that show.
Yes.
I was there simply to try and offer a Jewish way of reading what is in the Latter-day Saint community is believed to be a Jewish text. And that's how I read a Jewish text, period.
Got it. Can we put Maven's comment up there? Did you see that, Rabbi?
I didn't. I decided I probably shouldn't look at the comments anymore.
No, sometimes the comments from the live, I don't look at the live chat. Sometimes live chat comments get put up on the screen by people who are wiser than I.
Yes.
And this is what Maven had said. Could you read this, Rabbi, out loud?
See. It's partly blocked on mine. Let's see. Interfaith spaces are inherently difficult places to be because they are so caps important. And people like Rabbi Joe are, my thing is blocked. Critical.
As in important.
Important, but I just can't read because
precisely for being willing to navigate difficulty. I think he's brave. That's what Maven said.
Okay. Listen, I said this up front every time I write back and forth with the sister Maven. How was that? That was my Baptist preacher side going. No? All right, never mind.
Well, keep working on it.
Thank you. Well, at least you're laughing, RFM. Come on. Thank you, Maven. And Maven is amazing. And I appreciate her comments, her reflections. And I am with her in her pain, and all of you in your pain. Interfaith is always, I think, a potentially and profoundly difficult place to be. It's very easy to be in, I have the truth, right? Not to discount any text, but I am the way, the truth, and the life. No man comes to the Father but by me. From John
14:6,
Amen.
or the LDS Church is the only true and living church upon the face
Okay.
of the whole earth, with which the Lord God am well pleased.
Okay. That works for many. And the truth is, I live, I'll say it again, I live not just doing interfaith, I live in a place of interfaith, because I believe that life and wisdom and beauty is seen between and among. Okay, inter. I am in that place in between. I don't have all the clarity, but you know what the rabbis teach about our holy Torah, our holy 5 books of wisdom? We have spaces between words and spaces between our sentences. And they say so beautifully that some of the deepest teachings from our Torah, from our holy texts, are found in between the words, in between the letters, and in between the lines. I live in interfaith because I believe that in between is where we find wisdom and light and beauty. And the word for understanding in Hebrew, one of them, bina, it's in Hebrew, bina, it means understanding or insight. Chochmah, bina, vadas, we say wisdom, insight, understanding. That root word for understanding in Hebrew and insight has that same root word basically as in between. It is in between that we find the wisdom, even though it's not clear. You can't make something infinite finite. It makes it clear, but it removes that beauty and depth and breadth of the infinite dimension. So I live interfaith because I believe within and in between. Yes, it can be very, very unnerving and upsetting because I don't have clarity, but I live in that place in between because that is where true light and true mystery lives and will ground me. But it's not for everybody. You're muted, RFM. You're giving us the secrets to life, and you're muted.
I do that on purpose, like in the interstices.
Okay. Yes.
I can't pronounce that correctly, but you know what I mean.
Absolutely.
It's interstices, but it's not pronounced that way.
Correct.
Yeah.
Internecine.
All right.
Is that what it is? Okay. All right. So can we go to the next clip?
Absolutely.
We only have a few more.
Yeah. So
this is where Rabbi Joe Charnes mentions biblical precedents for the olive tree allegory. This is one of the things that I thought, why didn't they mention that in the 6 minutes?
Yes,
but
I agree.
But it did make it into the 30-minute extended interview, and I wanted to give the chance for the audience to see this.
Thank you.
That you know what the heck you're talking about, and you did talk about it, but it ended up on the cutting room floor for the 6-minute interview, and here it is.
There are other ways of reading it. We have the olive here, and the olive...
the main olive tree.
Yes, and then the grafting on and the cutting off.
Right.
I mean, this echoes the New Testament of Matthew, of Jesus, with Matthew 24 and 25, and Isaiah 5. The symbolic form is more important if it's imagery than the literal form.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It showed me that you know what you're talking about, to see, were you talking about stuff that lets me know that, right? And I was wondering why that was missing. Then I saw that you had mentioned it. Why did you mention it? Why did you think it was important to talk about that there?
Okay. First of all, just for Lila Tueller, who's posting, again, I haven't been reading it, but I can't miss this one. His focus is not truth. Yes, it is. My focus is absolutely truth. I said, is it true was the first principle that guides me. I absolutely focus on truth. And again, Lila, however you pronounce it, I'm sorry. One of the Hebrew names of God is Emes, or Emet in modern Hebrew, truth. I believe in truth. It's just I'm not limiting my truth because it doesn't fit within the confines of literal truth, formal truth. There's a brilliant teaching from an Episcopal priest that my wife taught me from a cookbook called The Supper of the Lamb. I'm vegan. She's giving me a book, Supper of the Lamb. Lovely. But his name is Father Capone. He passed on, unfortunately. But he says that the paradox is the only basket large enough to hold truth. Okay? I'm not looking for either or. Paradox is a both yes and a no, and it is both. Somehow, some way. I don't look for literal truth. I look for existential truth.
Yeah.
Okay.
Joseph Smith once said, "In proving contraries, truth is made manifest." It's that same sort of idea.
Absolutely. It's rich. So I am looking for literal truth. I'm not looking for literal truth. I'm living within and seeking existential truth. So why did I answer in that way? This was your question, right, RFM? I answered because my focus was on finding in the olives and the Olive Garden something that can redeem us in life. And I said it there. I don't care about the literal truth. What is important for me in Judaism, the olive is foundationally relevant to life. It's one of the three. Olives are one of the three necessities for healing. Okay, that's one of the necessities.
And light.
And light.
And through being crushed, we can give forth light.
That's a teaching based on, in Leviticus, it speaks of when you're making the oil. It speaks of shemen zayis zoch, okay, that it is the olive oil, shemen zayis, or zayit in modern Hebrew. It is the olive oil, kasis lamaor. It is crushed. Mm-hmm. But it then says for light. So the rabbis, the Hasidic rabbis, the mystic rabbis speak metaphorically that we are like olives, that we all, as human beings, and as many of your listeners have experienced because of the Latter-day Saint faith, being a member of that faith. I'm not saying that is the intention of the faith. I am saying that many in your community have been crushed and broken and deeply, deeply hurt by your faith, your leaders, and your community, just like in mine, just like in others. But what the rabbis do with this olive imagery, this is what matters to me, not whether you get olive oil out of it. Brilliant. I don't need the Bible for that. What I need is to be able to see the paradigmatic aspect, the symbolic aspect, which is we are olives also. And when they get crushed, what is our usual response when we are hurt by life, when we are crushed by life, oppressed or pressed down? What is our usual response? Often anger, blame, and aggression. What the rabbis are teaching when it says in Leviticus 26 that the olives were crushed lamaor, for light, what that is saying is, can we, when we are crushed, when we are broken, when we are hurt, can we give forth, bring forth light, love, forgiveness, charity, mercy? And you know what? Sometimes the answer is simply no. You have hurt me too much. And I understand that. And I sit down with them and say, yes, and I am with you. And all I can do is help put some aspect of this brokenness that you are experiencing back together. But can we not live simply with the normal response of anger when we are crushed by life? That is how I try to redeem my own pain. You think I've never been hurt? You think I don't feel often in life physical pain? I have a friend right now, a beautiful, soulful, loving friend who is grieving terribly, and had to tell, I'm not going to say his, her, but had to tell the children of this person that they may not be with their children. And you know what this person's response was because of the ailment that this person, again, not using pronouns, is suffering? This person is suffering deeply in pain, constant pain. And she had to tell the children. Can you imagine this? She had to tell her children she may not make it, folks. You know what her response was? Not anger, and she's crushed. Not bitterness, not blame, not judgment. She said to me, she said, it's making me feel more compassion and mercy for other people who are suffering. Okay? Yeah. If that's all you get out of tonight, please forgive me for anything that you may have heard or misheard. Give me the benefit of the doubt for being with you in your pain. My focus is simply to help all of us, myself first, make it through the crushing, painful aspects of life. Period.
Well, there was another rabbi, I don't know his name. Maybe you know this expression, Rabbi Charnes, who said that there's two kinds of people in the world. What? You already know it? No, it's serious. It's
I
serious.
I know.
There's two kinds of people in the world. There are those who suffer greatly, and there are those that we don't know very well.
Yeah. And my focus is on human beings. For those who don't, or we don't know, or those human beings who don't allow themselves to face their own pain, their own darkness, their own exile, their own deep questions. You need to search deeply, even if it ultimately leaves you in a place of deep questioning. Yeah. We need to know that all of us have pain and sorrow. And all I am doing, friends, and I am saying this to you because I really do hope I'll be honest with you. I'm still reeling. No, that's a play off your name, Bill. But I am internally, I am pained that people were hurt by anything that I said, because my focus is on bringing some dimension or aspect of wholeness back to life, especially for people who have been hurt by what is supposed to be life-affirming and life-giving, which is our faith. Yeah, I am here, and that's it. Please, folks, forget everything else. I am with you.
Boy, can we not do this, Bill?
Okay.
I'm so sorry. We're at 2 hours and 7 minutes, and I was just hoping. I apologize, Bill. If you want to do that, you go ahead. We're at 2 hours and 7 minutes, and I was hoping we get through the last couple of clips from the extended interview.
Sure.
I'm just thinking.
Yeah.
I will answer in 15 seconds.
Yeah, I just.
But the question is like 15 minutes.
No. I think the question's actually quite easy.
Okay, go ahead, Bill.
Let me ask you this. You seem to have indicated in the previous clip that you understood that much of the allegory of Zenos is found in Isaiah chapter 5 and Romans 11, other places in the New Testament, Luke.
I think it's Romans 10.
Yeah, okay, sweet. And
Matthew.
And I'm sure you're also aware that there are sections of the New Testament that make their way into the Book of Mormon almost verbatim.
Yes.
Can you all, again, I don't need you to, I'm not asking you to say the church isn't true. I understand I understand the walk you're doing.
Thank you.
Do you recognize for the folks on this side?
100%. Yes.
Absolutely reason.
You don't have to ask the question.
Well, but I want to say it out loud so that the apologist can't argue with it.
No, you're right. I'm answering before.
Yeah.
And then I'll answer after. Yes, go ahead.
That people who look at Mormonism and try to investigate whether it's true or not on its merit, find significant problems that make it almost impossible, if not impossible, in their brain to come to the realization that Mormonism is true.
Yes, I acknowledge that. And I said yes before. I said yes during your question. And I'm saying yes after. I acknowledge what you are experiencing through, not because the devil has a hold on your heart, but because you are using your heart and your mind And this is the real conclusion that you come to. And I struggle with that within my own faith and in my own faith community. So yes, yes, and yes. And if you didn't hear it the third time, yes.
Thank you.
Just to clarify, Rabbi, I'm the one who has the hold on the devil's heart.
Oh, well, yes.
And the second thing is, just so you know, for future reference, it is Romans 11. I checked it out.
Well, I told you on our phone, Jews can't count. You know, I'm one off either way.
It's okay. I just wanted to I just looked it up. And, you know, Bill was right. When Bill is right, I got to give him some credit publicly. And now the third attempt. Third
attempt. Yes, go ahead.
Third attempt by Scott Christopher to get you, because you're being recalcitrant, dang it, and you're not answering the question the way you're supposed to. So maybe if I come at it, I'm speaking for Scott now. Maybe if I come at it,
hostile witness, counsel.
Yes, a third time, and you know, get you to try and weigh in on the truthfulness and the authenticity of the Book of Mormon.
Yes.
And here's his question, the third time.
Amen.
We believe that the Book of Mormon was written anciently by ancient prophets who originated in Israel.
Right.
And then who came across to the Americas. And based on your opinion and your feeling of things, I mean, is there evidence in the book itself to support that claim?
There's the question. It's coming around the third time. Are you starting to feel like you're in Groundhog Day?
3 strikes and I'm out, I guess, with you, huh?
Yeah, third time. So he thinks maybe the third time, if I ask it again in a different way, I'll get you to answer the question. But you are recalcitrant. You say, no, I'm not going to answer your question, Mr.
I didn't say that. Objection.
That's between the lines.
It's my own counsel.
It's between the lines. I'm just following the rabbinic wisdom. So here we have your response.
Is there evidence in the book itself to support that claim?
So here's a question. It's a fair question. It's an honest question. And I will respond authentically. I'm not sure. I don't know, even in this is not simply about your text. This is in no way meant to dismiss your holy text, okay? I'm grateful to be in dialogue, sacred dialogue, and reflection over this text with you. And as I go through the year with others.
Right.
It's a wonderful and inspiring text. With that established, I would say also with my texts. But I have that same ambivalence in my own tradition. I'm not sure about, I know you said evidence, that's like proof light. I would say indicators.
Okay.
Okay. Is there intrigue? Is this something that calls you an awareness that has to be explored more?
Even better.
I would say I'm comfortable saying that as a rabbi, even if they defrock me. What am I going to do?
Even better. Even better. Now, in this next clip, okay, go ahead and you say anything you want about what you're perceiving, what you're thinking is this is really going on. But I mean, okay, look, it's pretty obvious. This is the third time he's trying to get you to say something that you don't want to say and weigh in on the evidence that shows the Book of Mormon is true.
It's not that I don't want to say it. It's I may not be saying it in the way that in my answer you want me to say it, or in the way that he wants me to say it in my answer. I'm not, you both want me, you're criticizing him for leading me in a direction, but you want me to, you're leading me in a direction that wants me to say it this way. So, you know, you guys are 2 peas in a pod. My answer, honestly, is that's not my focus, folks. I don't care if, listen, RFM, you've never seen my big toe. If you did, you might actually believe that it is the holy God in heaven above. And if that's what you believe and it makes you a better person, wonderful. My focus is strictly on what it can bring us in life. And again, I am a Jew and I have the same questions in my own faith. And I believe, honestly, that it is better unless I have absolute certain knowledge. Like it says in the Talmud, in ta'anit or tinus. I think it's page 4. Teach your tongue to say, I don't know. Because the truth is, I ultimately don't know anything. But my focus is simply, he is probably trying to get an answer that he would like. And I am giving the answer that respects and honors who I am. I am answering in the way that I answer about my own faith. If you asked me, did Moses really get the holy 10 commandments / all of the 5 books of Moses on, or most of it, on the mountain of Sinai? That's a non-question for me, because my focus, you want evidence of a yes or a no. Does it prove it? Does it disprove it? I told you up front, my focus on quote unquote evidence is the evidence of a transformed life that is lived as we walk through life with each other, with more light, with more forgiveness, with more charity, with less judgment, with more honor, and with more respect. And I wish the simple focus, I saw a lot of comments that were just, come on, folks, can't you at least see the beauty that we have here of 2 people of different faiths in dialogue, honoring, respecting, and parting ways with grace, rather than shooting each other up like they've done in history, like the Protestant Reformation against the Catholic. I lived in Germany. I saw all the love of Jesus in the churches that were shot up by the loving opponents of each other, and the broken holy structures and the lives that were lost. Can we focus on what is my focus, and hear my focus, which is the evidence of a life transformed by a story, whether or not it is historically, literally true. It is true in a person's life, and that is the evidence that I care about. And if it leads to anything other than light and beauty, it's either the person who is gravely, gravely distorted this holy wisdom, or it's the faith tradition itself. Period.
Yes. Well, of course, in spite of your answers, I know what your real answer is. And do you know how I know that?
Because you're
Rabbi Charnes. You're not Elder Charnes.
Oh, and that is, I am telling you, if I can go to my grave now at peace, that is the greatest and funniest joke comment that I have heard. It is brilliant. Thank you.
If you go to your grave as Elder Charnes, I'll be there to dedicate the thing.
Well, hey, listen, if I'm an elder, you can join me at General Conference next week.
Oh, I'll be. Now it's this weekend, just so you know.
Well, that's what I meant by next week.
Okay, I just wouldn't want you to miss out on all the fun.
Thank you. I can get you a ticket, I think, RFM. Talk to me after.
That'd be cool. So here's this thing, okay? So I can, shout opposed. So here's this thing where it says it came to pass, because it came to pass is brought up, I think, by Scott, and you seize upon it.
No, I brought it up.
Okay, you bring it up. Well, whatever. And he brings up that it's in the Bible then. And you seize upon this because now it's a perfect illustration of what it is you've been trying to say.
Yes.
Which is that this is absolutely in the Book of Mormon. It absolutely is a Hebraism, and it's in the Book of Mormon. And now this gets to that question of what does it prove? Because it's all over the Bible, the Old Testament, and therefore for it to show up in the Book of Mormon, it's a Hebraism, it's in the Book of Mormon, but what does it prove? And I think Scott will go along with you on that in agreeing with you that it really doesn't seem to prove that much at all.
Yes, and they left out a lot of what we said, and not that it doesn't prove much, it proves absolutely nothing, period. Absolutely, categorically. It means he read the King James Bible or 19th century literature. And my focus again was on what potentially does this quote unquote Hebraism, which sounds strange in English and is used in a way in Hebrew, okay, that is different from English. What does it bring into our lives? The rabbis look at grammar. And what does that imply for us in life? Just like what do the ands, the extra ands imply? I don't care if it's there. It doesn't prove anything. It means he copied it or knew about it from the King James Bible, period. Doesn't prove anything.
All right. Well, now that we described exactly what's going to happen, let's go ahead and watch it and see if we're right.
Let's see if I forgot what I said.
Okay.
That as, and in fact, in one of the articles that I read, mentioned that if all the it came to pass is were taken out of the Book of Mormon, you'd have a pamphlet.
Yeah, there'd be 14
that's what Mark
words.
Twain said. It's
Yeah.
pretty funny. So that was I think it was in Donald Perry's article. I can't remember, but I think it was Donald Perry.
Well, and it came to pass.
It is
was
a
so
Hebraism.
extant in the Bible.
Yes, well, that's
anyone
the
could
problem.
copy that.
See, that's the thing.
But that's not all there is, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So that one doesn't necessarily do it. The form itself, I believe, is a Hebraism.
Right.
But Joseph Smith got it from. That didn't mean he knew
Exactly.
Can I just say
Yes.
that in the clip that doesn't make it into the actual video, now again, you got the edited or the extended version of your interview, but in the clip that's actually used in the interview, this doesn't make it. He is agreeing that "and it came to pass" means nothing. It doesn't prove anything. The trouble is that in the first two parts, I think it's part 2, he's the one who's advocating with Donald Perry that "and it came to pass" is an evidence that the church is true. In other words, Scott Christopher is playing both sides of the argument, and off the record, sort of more privately, what doesn't make it into the final cut is, I agree with you, Rabbi, it means nothing. Meanwhile, before they went back to Spain, it meant everything.
Okay.
We went back to Spain.
Anyway.
So we already talked about this beforehand, and that was pretty much what happened, wasn't it? And I thought it was a great example. I could see you going, the light bulb going off. This is a perfect example to illustrate what I've been trying to say before, is that Hebraisms in the text are not proof of ancientness or authenticity, but I am here as a rabbi with my training, my understanding, my experience, and I can help you understand the way a rabbi would view this in a text.
Yes. Period.
Okay.
The language is instructive for the soul.
Yeah.
Period. Uh-oh.
Yeah.
Late war. I didn't read
You ever heard of this one?
No.
No, and I don't want to spend. You've already
19th century literature that you were referencing.
Okay.
Yeah, you've already acknowledged it. I just want to note, "and it came to pass" is throughout the late war.
Yes.
It's not just an ancient way of speaking. It's also a 19th century way of speaking, which you just said a few minutes ago.
Yes.
And then I don't want to spend much time on it. Folks can pause it and read it themselves. I just want to note, the Late War is a book that is often said to be very similar to the Book of Mormon. If you read this, I'll just read a part of it. "And it came to pass that when the princes and the lords and the counselors of Britain saw the decree, their wrath was kindled, and their hearts were ready to burst with indignation. For verily, said they, this insult hath overflowed the cup of our patience." In other words, if you read the Late War, it reads exactly like the Book of Mormon.
Okay.
It seems, again, I don't necessarily need you to comment one way or the other. I just want to note to the audience,
Yes.
it seems like rather than presenting it as an evidence, if you're going to be fair to the issue, it seems like you also have to acknowledge that "and it came to pass" and the same sort of writing style that's in the Book of Mormon. Again, Reformed Egyptian on gold plates, ancient America, ancestors of the American Indians, modern English dictator.
Yes.
Translating into a modern book, and somehow we're to believe that both have the exact same writing style. It seems more rational to me.
Yes.
That Joseph Smith is just doing what everyone in the 19th century seems to be doing.
And that is a absolutely reasonable conclusion. And the answer is yes. And all faiths often suffer from these same types of challenges, not necessarily in a literary sense, but when you get into critical analysis of texts from the academics in the universities, they present a terrible, terrible challenge to all but the most faithful. So I honor and I accept and I respect, and I will say yes. And are there ways possibly of working around it? Possibly. And often possibly not. And we struggle with, how do I live with this truth, quote unquote, that seems to go beyond the boundaries of what a reasonable mind can accept?
Right. Thank you.
Mhm.
RFM, 2 ships passing in the night.
We're to the last clip. I
Oh,
euphemistically.
no. This is the end?
Oh, yeah. This is the
Love
end.
you too.
No, but I euphemistically call this 2 ships passing in the night, because what I see is 2 individuals talking completely past each other. And I hear you trying to focus on what you're trying to focus on. And I hear Scott Christopher trying to focus on what he's focusing on. And here's my observation, and if we can play the clip, and I'd like to get your response to this, Rabbi.
Sure.
Is that your your avoidance of answering the question about evidence to Scott Christopher and saying, I don't know.
Okay.
Out of kindness or whatever the 3 that you follow, that's your response.
Now, that's my Trinity. Amen. Can I get an amen from all of you?
Except for the fact that now he takes your I don't know, and he's going to take that as evidence.
Yes.
That what he is asking for, the evidence is true. And in some ways, he's a little bit like Jim Carrey in Dumb and Dumber saying, so you're telling me there's a chance. But here's what happens. And this is why I call it 2 ships passing in the night. He will take your I don't know. The fact that you did not say it's a fraud. Hey, I'll take that as evidence any day, baby, because I got a rabbi who's not telling me the Book of Mormon is a fraud. And I just feel exhilarated by this evidence that the Book of Mormon is true. That's the impression I'm getting from him. Let's play the clip and let's see what everybody thinks about this.
Fair enough.
For those that are watching, though, that already have a spiritual, who
give me a
aren't
second. Sorry, we rewind
on a
that.
quest to find evidence, but who just find. For those that are watching, though, that already have a spiritual witness and conviction, who aren't necessarily on a quest to find evidence, but who just find this fascinating.
Yes.
The "and it came to pass" is cool to them, because it's like, I'm hearing a Jewish rabbi tell me that is very, very Hebrew in its use and in its repetitive use as well. I loved what you said about that.
Yes.
However, it's not proof positive, because like we say, well, anybody with a Bible who's supposed to be copying a biblical sounding book are going to put a lot of ye's and haths and thus saith and it came to passeth.
Yes.
Right.
Yeseth. But if we give the benefiteth of the doubteth,
right?
Thank youeth. Thank theeth. Sorry.
Nice.
Sorryeth.
Continue your thought. I derailed you with supportive
beautifully,
words.
Beautifully. No, if we look at, I do find it very significant. Again, I am reading as a rabbi.
Of course.
I find it significant that Jacob 5 is the longest chapter.
Yes.
In the Book of Mormon.
For a variety of reasons.
And that it has 77 verses.
Yes.
And that it has, as
31.
You said, 31, and it came to pass is whatever the origin of that, that it's repeated, that it happens to have that number. I don't think Joseph Smith probably knew, because he didn't have versification, as you said. But whoever designed it, it seems, if we want to read more poetically, which is how the rabbis read very often, it feels like that has at least an echo. I'll use the word of there is an ancient echo. I don't know the origins, but if I'm reading a text, that's how I would read my own text. I would tell you the same thing. But there's great interest.
I'll take that.
And intrigue and curiosity and enough peculiarity in the text, just itself, that either for whatever reason is worthy of consideration and reflection and study. That's how I would answer that.
The fact that you...
Yes, I know.
I'm not going to say cannot, but would not unequivocally say, no, it is no way in the world is this an ancient Hebrew text.
Absolutely.
Your answer is, I don't know. I'll take an I don't know any day. I love that.
But it's worthy. It's an I don't know
that's worthy of
consideration and attention.
And it's also a contemporary to Joseph Smith echo as well.
Yes.
Yeah.
So you're saying there's a chance, Rabbi. The thing is so amazing. Okay. Because I think I understand where you're coming from. I think that you and I live and dwell in somewhat the same neighborhood, spiritually, philosophically. And hopefully some of that's been evidenced in our phone calls we've had over the past couple of days. But I see what you're doing, and it helps me see more when I understand the three things that you focus on, which you explained to me and you explained to the audience, and I see exactly what you're doing. And I also see what he's doing, because I've been a member of this church and an apologist for ages, and I know exactly what he's doing. And I'm just seeing these two ships going right past each other, and they're not actually connecting. And he's trying to take from what you're saying the evidence that he wants to take from it that shows the Book of Mormon true, and you're trying to focus on just the spiritual aspect and not be rude to him and not come out and tell him, no, I don't believe it, because you wouldn't say that about anybody. And I understand that's part of who you are and where you come from. And I respect that. And yet, sometimes it seems, and I get the impression that at least with Scott Christopher, and at least in front of the camera, and at least for this show, he's going to find you saying evidence for the Book of Mormon, regardless of what it is that you actually say. What were your thoughts about that exchange?
First, I agree with you. Just remember, my concern, to use your model, and my hope is that when our two ships pass, when our two ships, I have an issue with mics. I said I'm a microphobe.
It's a nice word.
I made it up, but I was giving a talk one time at a place on the podium, and I adjusted the microphone and I literally pulled the head off it. So I have hangups with mics, microphones, not mics. In the model that you used, and you were very funny and you were quite radiant about and laughter with the two ships passing. I would say yes. And so what? Because at least our ships of faith, our ships of approach weren't lobbing cannons at each other, but we were sitting charitably and in dialogue with each other, honoring each other's differences. And if someone needs or wants or sees something more and is building something more out of what I may say, and it's leading them into a better place as far as how do they live, I will say, I'm glad our ships are passing because it brought them something. And I hope it also brings me something. My doubts can be enhanced. My questions can be somewhat reined in or grounded by seeing people of other faith. And I think that's beautiful. I think it's beautiful. So we did pass often or sometimes. And I say, thank God, because there isn't one way to encounter the sacred. There's not one way to eat. There's not one way to live. There's not one language that we should all speak. As long as it's deepening us as individuals, I am fine with people hearing more or less in what I say, as long as they're not making uncharitable judgments, mocking judgments, condescending judgments, or simply outright nasty, mean-spirited judgments. Just allow me to have my own sacred way that may not answer the yes and the no of the historicity or the factuality in terms of evidence, but that this quote-unquote evidence in their lives is also enough, even if we all may think, for whatever the faith tradition is, that this is a bunch of baloney. I don't care if it makes you into a better, more loving human being.
Well, Rabbi, you could have made Scott Christopher absolutely overjoyed by just saying, yeah, there's Hebraisms in the Book of Mormon. And yeah, I do think it proves it's ancient.
Well, but that's, you should have muted that one, RFM.
Your response?
I said you should.
Here's your big chance. I'm sure he's watching. Scott, Rabbi.
Scott, you know what? I absolutely enjoyed our time together. And I hope that our dialogue deepens you as a human being. I know the kindness in your heart and how you received me taught me something very beautiful, that we as human beings may have often different approaches, different understandings, different quote truths or validating truths. But you know what? We can go to lunch after and we can give each other a hug. And I wish more of religious history lived that way, period.
Yeah.
While you're talking to Scott Christopher, Rabbi, could you invite him to come on Mormonism Live?
If you'll come with me to General Conference.
Well, that's a big trip. I mean, I watch it.
I'm kidding. I can ask him. I haven't spoken to him since, but
Radio Free Mormon just got invited to General Conference by a rabbi.
Can I ask you one more? Can I ask you one more thing, Joe?
Sure, you can ask me anything. Thank you.
One last thing. We'll close out.
Thank you for this time. Really,
you're very welcome, and we'll close out the show after this.
And I'm sorry, folks, that it's gone on so long.
No worries. In that last clip, you say, if we give it the benefit of the doubt. And that's a big phrase, because I'm not going to give the benefit of the doubt to the Bhagavad Gita. I mean, I'm okay with you. I've read parts of it, by the way. I'm okay looking at it as a sacred text, a spiritual text.
Yes.
But the historicity is what I'm talking about. I'm not going to give the Bhagavad Gita the benefit of the doubt. I'm not going to give the Quran the benefit of the doubt. I'm not going to give lots of sacred texts the benefit of the doubt on historicity, because the data point seems to the rational mind to be blatantly against it being a historical text.
You're right.
I'm assuming you wouldn't argue that we would give the Book of Mormon any more benefit of the doubt than any of those other sacred texts. It doesn't deserve more benefit of the doubt.
Yes, and yes. And I would only say the only benefit that I look for is not the benefit of the doubt, but the benefit that the book in question brings to the heart of the person who is receiving it. I hope they benefit from that wisdom. I don't know if the different families in the first two chapters of the Bhagavad Gita actually existed in the warring story that takes place. These were two warring factions of the same family. I don't know, but I do care what else it means, because again, I don't believe that any sacred text is limited by its historic foundations alone. I believe it's living through history, but it ultimately leads us beyond history into the infinite.
Yeah, but no one is required to give the benefit of the doubt on historicity when the evidence is solidly against it, regardless of what issue we're talking. Take Mormonism out of it.
Okay.
Take any moment, any conspiracy theory where the evidence is just strongly against it. We should never give the benefit of the doubt to historicity where the data is monumental against it.
Yes, as long as the data, very often, and this is a struggle that I have with the academic community, they often don't read the best of scholarship from the religious side that disagrees with them. The religious, often more conservative, theologically speaking, of all communities, East and West, in terms of faith, they often have answers to some of the challenges. But yes, I don't give the benefit of the doubt if it seems like it's quote unquote undermining history or reason. I'm not interested in the history. I told you I am interested in where that text leaves me and my place in history on this planet. Is it bringing more heart, more light, and more connection, whether it's historical or not? I give the benefit of the doubt to people, not to texts. I don't care about its history, my own text included.
Amen. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Anything else from you, RFM?
No, but actually I'll say one thing. Hey, Rabbi.
Yes, sir.
I think Mormons need you bad and badly. Yeah. And I know the grammar is correct with badly.
Yes,
but
it's an adverb.
They really need
modifying
you.
An adjective.
Mormonism it's an American religion.
Yes.
It was birthed here. It's developed here. It has its headquarters in the United States of America. It's in the West. It's a creation of the West. And the belief of the vast majority of the members of the church and the teachings of the church are extremely literalistic, and they reflect that Western tradition in which it's been nurtured and brought up and born and all that stuff. And the Eastern, if I can call it that, the Eastern sensibility that you bring to it, to give symbolism, to find out, to get rid of that literalism, or at least put it to the side, for a second. Let's just talk about the symbolism and what this can actually mean in our lives.
Yes.
Because there is right now a huge war going on amongst faithful Mormons about where the Book of Mormon took place.
Yes.
And there are some who are, it was in Mesoamerica, and it's down here in southern Mexico and Guatemala, in that area, and that's where it took place. And then there's this other group, which are the Heartlanders, and it's up there around New York and Ohio and the Great Lakes region. And that's where it took place. And there are all sorts of battles going on between these people today, and quite acrimonious.
Yes.
About something that they feel very passionate about, but springs from their literalism of the text, when actually there's nothing that they're talking about that has anything to do with making us better people, or taking from the text things that can help us in our personal growth spiritually and toward God.
Yes.
And I think that's a shame, but I think that that's where you come in, and you are so valuable to the LDS community. And I wanted to say that publicly and commend you for it.
Thank you. Thank you. And we all, as people of faith or of non-faith, wherever you are, as humans, we all see the problem that faith often results in. And it's tragic. It's tragic. And I do believe that there is, I've used this language before, there is deep wisdom in all of our faith traditions, all of our communities, all of our holy texts. And Judaism sometimes does have an issue with a more formal basis. Here's a form orientation. But we have in our hermeneutical approach, the approach that we analyze and study texts with, the intellectual and heartful and soulful approach that we use, has a foundation, a quote literal or basic, not literal, but very basic contextual aspect. But the others are always seeking, and Maven, the amazing Maven, mentioned this in her comments on your episode 2, that Jewish tradition does often seek to see within the text, because within the text is what leads you beyond the text. The words themselves leave you locked into the form of the text. But once you go within, or in between the words, in between the letters, in between the spaces, you are then led to where the words are ultimately meant to lead us, which is beyond language, into essence, into existential, absolute, transcendent existence. And I hope that all of us in our dialogues, if we struggle with a faith community that has hurt us, that has harmed us, that has brought real pain and ugliness and suffering, damn it, get out of there. Get out of there, but don't necessarily conclude. This is my hope. Don't necessarily conclude that that's the essence of the faith, but possibly the failure of human beings who are not living up to the light and the beauty and the message of that faith. We all have miserable, miserable souls in our faith communities, but our faith can always lead us, or whatever. If you don't have faith, your belief in the human potential, that can always lead us into a place of greater grace and greater connection and greater community. And I hope we can always dialogue and appreciate the fact that a dialogue, even if you think it's all nonsense that we're talking about, that we can be in dialogue, respectful, honoring dialogue, that ends up leaving our hearts enhanced and more peace in the world. We could at least focus on the beauty of that, rather than the failures of the humans who aren't living up to that beautiful wisdom. And I'm glad our ships pass and don't lob bombs at each other. I'm glad we came together today and you gave me all this time to ramble and try and put my thoughts together to share with you what my hopes are. I am grateful, and I hope that all of us, the critics, those who felt I didn't answer, those who felt I missed the pain of another person who is suffering in your community, please know, first and foremost, I am here, I am always here If anybody wants to reach out to me, Bill and RFM, I promise you I am open to hearing all of what I didn't do right. They can reach out to me, and I am happy that we have come together, and I am leaving, honestly, greatly enhanced by what I hope is a new and enduring friendship.
Yeah.
Period.
Rabbi, I'm going to let Bill close this out. Thank you for your final words. Wonderfully said. I just want you to know we've been going at this for 2 hours and 45 minutes now.
That's because you won't mute yourself.
I know, but I just want to tell you something. All 2 hours and 45 minutes of you are going to be open for everybody to see. We're not editing this.
Yeah.
Not to 30 minutes, not to 6 minutes.
This is Joe Charnes, the complete interview. And Joe Charnes, Joe, I just want to say,
I am better for this dialogue, honestly, and I need to. I am so, listen, I am hurt. I'm not hurt at what I'm not hurt because of the words that Maven shared with us, the thoughts, the pain. I'm not hurt from her words. I am hurt that somehow I didn't express myself in a way that didn't help those who are suffering with faith. Hear my presence with them, hear my struggle, my honor, and my respect of their pain that they experienced in their faith. I promise you, I promise you, I promise you, that is where I want to begin, listening to your community, and you have a community. I am going to take to heart that I may not have expressed, because again, you go to an audience that you don't know. I went to a very, very Christian audience once, conservative theologically speaking, and I started speaking, and I noticed deer in the headlights. And I actually said, you know what, folks? You know, like it says in Matthew chapter 29, and again, I'm not a Messianic Jew, and I got silence.
29.
I know, thank you.
28.
And I said, okay, folks, let's try this again. I heard in Matthew chapter 29, because they phased out. They just lost my train of thought. And someone says, wait, doesn't Matthew only have 28? And I said, yes. But I realized I've lost you folks, because I was coming from a place of metaphor and imagery and depth. You know, I don't look at Cupid as some little baby angel who's got poopy diapers going around shooting people with an arrow as an imagery of love. There's deep symbolism and meaning and breadth behind the form of Cupid. Okay? And I told these people, what am I doing wrong? And they said, we want to know just what the text says. And I said, folks, you don't need me for what it says, but I'm here to give you a deeper sense. It's got deeper layers. And we talked back and forth, and I learned how to express my symbolism in a way that was more relevant and meaningful for them. So I honestly, folks out there, I promise to read all of the feedback. Please keep it brutal. Please keep it honest. Please keep it, if it needs to be harsh, if it's true, if it's necessary, I exempt you from the kindness. Please understand, I may have failed because I didn't understand you. But please give me the benefit of the doubt, knowing that I am with you in your pain, and I honor your place. I honor your struggle, and I probably would have left too. So please feel free to reach out to me. I'm a social media hermit, but I should get on so that I can receive their criticisms, their corrections, their instructions. We have a term called reproof in Hebrew, tochacha. And the only hope is that it's tochacha im ahava, that it's reproof or rebuke with love and the intent to heal and redeem, not simply to break down, period. So I am sorry, folks, that I didn't hear or speak in a way that you could hear. I do. I speak to people who have left my faith. In fact, I talked to a lady who left the Latter-day Saint faith. And I said I would have left too a few years ago. And damn it, please stay with me. I'm here. So I am sorry again. Please forgive me and help me better walk my way in between, listening to all and trying to bring some sense of wholeness to our brokenness as we live together and love together and walk together and forgive together. I'm sorry and shalom.
Wonderful words. We got a great audience, I got to tell you. They're bright, they're gifted, they're wonderful. And I think on behalf of the entire Mormonism Live audience, by this point, I can say, yes, we forgive you. And as a high priest after the order of Melchizedek, Rabbi, I give you absolution of your sins.
Thank you. And
Joe
I make
Charnes.
absolute determination and commitment to hear all of your community. Thank you.
Joe Charnes, thank you so much for joining us. Folks, please please subscribe, help this episode get some more visibility. We'd much appreciate that. Folks, if you want to donate to the program to help us keep this alive, please go to mormonismlive.org.
Send us your shekels.
Click the donate button. Send us a donation. $5 a month, $10 a month is much appreciated. Joe Charnes, once again, thank you so much. Folks, thank you for joining us and watching, and everybody have a great night. See you next week on Mormonism Live.
Thank you.
Out your doubts.